Okay, we are starting the Finance Committee meeting. It is 6:30. We'll begin with the meeting and then go into the public hearing portion of the meeting. First, I do just want to double check. We did have John, Michelle, Peter can all hear me. I need to know if Jay can hear me. Oh, there you are, Jay.
Yes.
Okay.
I can.
Yoke. So, in accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel, and this meeting of the Finance Committee is being conducted remotely. Excuse me for a minute. I just want to mute Jack. In response to the COVID-19 coronavirus, is currently following the guidance from the Lunenburg Board of Health, Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent the spread, and all town facilities are currently closed to the public. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, all public meetings are being conducted remotely. The order, which you can find posted on the town website on the COVID-19 Information Center page, accessed through the town manager's webpage, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will have public comment at the end of the meeting. If you are watching and unable to participate through the Zoom meeting, you are welcome to send an email to tburchield@lunenburgonline.com, and we will read that at the end of the meeting. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Again, the way that the meeting is going to go is we will take care of some business at the beginning. We will then, actually I should just to double check with Heather, will we start the warrant articles and then bring in the budget presentation when you are prepared to do the budget presentation, or did you want to start with that before we hear the warrant articles? I'm going to have to unmute you.
If you want to start
Okay.
with the articles with the people that are here to present on them, or how do you want to do it?
Well, what's the pleasure of the board? Do we want to hold off on because do we want to hold the money articles later? And then I believe Chief Marino, you have an article on the dog. I'm not even sure what that issue was. Would Adam be speaking then to the planning board's article? Then we may, yeah, we can take them out of order and then move into those. I'm a little bit concerned that Dave must have followed the bad link as well. So I'm surprised that he's not here yet. So why don't we do that then? First, we'll start with opening the meeting with a review of the minutes. Peter sent out 2 sets of minutes, and I would ask if anybody has had an opportunity to review those minutes.
Yes.
I have.
I have.
No, I haven't.
Okay. Jay has not. Michelle has. John has.
I reviewed the first set of minutes, the earlier set, and it was good. I would readily approve it for as minutes for that meeting.
Want to defer to the end of the meeting, Terry, and let Jay and
Yeah, Jay, if you can get a chance to just glance over them before the end of the meeting, then I will defer to the end of the meeting. It would be nice to clear up at least a couple sets. And thank you, Peter, for getting those done.
thank you for your patience.
All right, I'm going to, Peter, this says that I can let multiple people share screens. I'm going to ask you, if you wouldn't mind to, let me just see if I can set Could you try to see if, Peter, if you would be able to share the screen that has the warrant articles, the document, or do you not have that?
I've got my email open. I didn't save everything to my desktop, but I'm sure I can pull that up. That is from Heather. Track draft
Yeah,
ATM warrant.
That's the one, right?
Okay.
Yes, from today.
Was that just today? My goodness.
Yeah, I got it.
All right, let me just see if it's sharing.
Yeah, should be.
Perfect. All right.
You got it.
So if you could move then to Heather, do you know which article it is that Chief Marino would be speaking to?
I think it's X and Y.
X and Y.
I think so.
I go into V here. V. Oh, these are sections. W X.
Okay, so there's X. We see X. Okay, Chief Marino, would you like to speak to what it is that the article is trying to do?
He's muted.
Is he muted? All right, see now, okay, now I have no idea what I'm looking at. Manage participants, where is Chief Marino? Sorry, Chief, I think you're okay.
Yep, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is more or less a house cleaning item, or housekeeping item. It's a kennel bylaw, but basically what it does is directs you to Mass General Law, Chapter 140, with regards to dog kennels. And what happened was back in 2012, the legislature made a major change to Chapter 140 with respect to all the sections that have to do with animals and animal control. And the purpose of this bylaw is basically just to get up to speed with the state law. And that's all a bylaw really does. It just gives people information. But the state law guides the bylaw. So that's what we're doing. We're just making it more clear, making it clear that it directs people to the Mass General laws, and then it sets a fine structure as well. And that's, of course, that's the town piece. So what we've done, and you'll see in Y, is we've changed the fine structure to comply. And essentially that's the long and the short of it.
Okay, does anyone on the committee have any questions for the chief regarding this warrant article?
I do. I can't find my electronic hand, so I'm sorry. Just a real.
No, that's okay.
I'll figure it out. Just a technical question. The fines at the end, are the fines new or have they always been there?
The fines have always been there. It's just the structure's changed. It's the $300 is the maximum fine that can be levied under 4021D, Mass General Law 4021D. And that's a 300 in this bylaw. That means it's $300 a day. So again, we're just trying to comply with the state law with respect to the bylaw.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I should also point out, because this is a public hearing on the warrant articles, if anyone present in the meeting does have at any time a question that they want to direct to the person speaking to the article, please feel free to raise your hand in the participant section of the Zoom meeting, and I will unmute you. The only question that I would have, oh, I'm sorry, John, I see your hand.
It's quite all right, but go ahead, Terry. I can hold the question.
No, go right ahead.
Okay, well, the question is actually to the chief. Chief Reno,
Yes.
have the fines themselves changed? And do you have an idea what the possible net effect on additional revenue from fines could be?
The fines have changed, but I don't have, I couldn't possibly tell you what, any increase in revenues or, I mean, they're not going to decrease, I can tell you that.
Well,
But I obviously I can't tell you what that's going to mean in terms of like annual income through those fines.
thank you, Chief.
Well, I guess the question then would go to how often does this come up as an issue for the town?
Not very often, not very often at all, but it's an important bylaw because when it does come up, it sometimes has an effect on abutters. And this new statute, it requires anybody who applies for a license to go before the zoning board of appeals. That gives the abutters a chance to weigh in on whether or not they want their neighbor kenneling several dogs. So, although it doesn't come up that often, it's extremely important.
No, I'm not questioning whether it's the importance of it, and the reason I'm asking how often it comes up is more to the question of, do we find that this has a material effect or a financial effect, so that when we come around to making a determination whether we would make a recommendation for approval of this, we would typically do that if we saw that there was one of our options is to say that we don't find a financial impact to the town. So I guess that would be really where my question was going.
Yeah, no, and I would say that there's no financial impact to the town whatsoever. If anything, it's bringing revenue.
Okay. Or, if it prevents us getting sued, that would be nice too. So.
Well, that's the other thing. That's exactly what we're trying to avoid.
Okay. Peter, did you have your hand up?
I did. I also was having trouble finding my electronic participant here. But I did just find it. So my view on this is that this makes it easier to manage the kennel licenses because you've got a clearer bylaw, and therefore there's less of an opportunity to get litigious when things go wrong. Is that a fair description?
Yeah, exactly. What was happening is you had our bylaw saying one thing and the state law saying the other, something else, and the state law really trumps the bylaw. So that's what we're trying to avoid because it was confusing.
And then from a process perspective, Chief, this says that a copy of a special permit from the Zoning and Board of Appeals must be included. So is this necessitating a hearing by the zoning board?
It would. Yes, it would.
And are existing kennels grandfathered?
Yes. Yes, they would be.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions for the chief? Okay, well, thank you, Chief Marino.
Well, it's my pleasure, Terry, and I just want to point out that if I'm still on,
You are.
Well,
I made some cookies.
Carrot cake.
Want to make you feel at home.
Well played.
I didn't have anybody
Thank you.
drop any by my home.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You as
All
well.
right, then let's move on then back to the non-budget items. I believe we'll probably go to Adam to speak to the planning board's articles on the excavation.
All right, so
What letter are those, Heather?
CC and BB.
Oh, geez, CC. We're going to CC.
It's the planning board. You knew it was going to be down in the double letters.
Mhm.
I'll take A, B. I'll take Q.
Bear with me while I scroll.
I don't even know how you get these in there.
CC. I went to CC, but I can't find BB. I went from AA to. Oh, BB was crossed out and went to CC. All right, I see. Okay.
So the first article is similar to. Okay, so.
I'm going to go to the second one first.
Yeah, the second one is the new proposed bylaw for earth removal. It's similar to what was proposed at the fall special town meeting, and at that time the planning board was looking to add earth fill to the bylaw. That seemed to be something that a fair amount of people were opposed to. So the planning board took the input from the fall special town meeting, removed earth fill from the bylaw, and went back and did a little bit more work on dialing in the earth removal. And the purpose and idea behind this is to take our existing earth removal bylaw, which is, about page and a half, and it leaves some vaguities and gray areas where it's not clear what it's expecting or looking for, and introduce a bit more substance to it to clearly define what the expectations are through earth removal operations in town. We have shared this with the current permit holders. The Keating Corporation is probably the largest earth removal operation in town. They're the two people we deal with there, their environmental safety compliance officer and their chief of operations both looked at it, did provide some questions, some brief comments. I think we addressed all of those in what we were putting forth. They've seen the drafts. They haven't raised any major red flags. The board did have a public discussion about this, and a lot of the excavating contractors in town were there. They had some concerns mostly about some of the stuff the planning board was proposing in draft regulations, not specifically the bylaw itself. So this is, it does two things. It updates the bylaw and it moves the authority to permit earth removal operations from the Board of Selectmen to the planning board. And just to dovetail both articles together, CC is the existing bylaw, and the proposal for that article is to just remove the Board of Selectmen as the permitting authority and hand it to the planning board. So in essence, if the new bylaw were to pass and be approved through town meeting, the planning board would look to pass over the alteration to the existing article because it wouldn't be necessary.
Okay, so CC only changes who's responsible for hearing.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions on that one?
As such, does CC have any material effect on the cost of excavating in the town?
CC, no. The change from the selectmen to the planning board doesn't have any impact on cost for excavation. And again, just to be clear, this isn't if the town is digging up the road, they need a permit. This is for, and that's probably, and I did leave this out inadvertently, but the proposed bylaw also increases the threshold from 10 cubic yards to 1,500 cubic yards. So currently, anyone who fills a triaxle technically needs an earth removal permit.
Mhm.
Under the proposed bylaw, it would be more for operations that are commercially removing earth for use in septic or building or other projects. So it would, I don't want to say it will increase cost for those folks. It changes the permitting slightly, but it does so in a definable, predictable way because the bylaw is explicit in what it expects. Whereas the existing bylaw says you need to come get a permit and you need to kind of meet these vague standards, but we're not going to tell you what we expect you to submit to meet these standards. So while someone could come in with a piece of paper that they drew at their desk on the way in, it might not meet the standards and they may spend more time going through the permitting process, whereas the new bylaw is, again, giving them a standard to meet.
Thank you, Adam.
Okay, so basically then, in terms of financial impact, there could be none because if the permitting was currently going on, we would have been raising fees that we're not raising because the implementation of, or basically you're talking about a number that's so small that you're not necessarily having people apply for permits for digging that much.
I think there's some of that, and I think there's some of people don't realize how low the threshold is, and they just go about doing their business, not recognizing that it meets or requires the permit. And I think, you know, we talk about this, it seems every 6 months when we bring a bylaw to the warrant and I come in front of you folks. The bylaws themselves don't have a specific financial impact on the municipal government. They may have some financial impact on folks who are applying for permits or how they go about getting permits. But most of that cost could, in my opinion, be seen as a reduction on impact to the town because it's actually bringing in funds that are covering more of the actual staff time and work that we do, which is the purpose of the permit fees is to cover our internal reviews and work that we do.
John, you had your hand up?
I did, just to respond to you, that I agree with you. There doesn't appear to be any direct financial effect. My understanding right now.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Burney? Seeing no hands anywhere. And we will thank you, Adam. I hope
Thank
you
you.
have a wonderful rest of your evening.
I appreciate you taking me out of order, and I hope it's a smooth, easy evening for you.
Thank you so much.
All right, have a good night.
You too.
Thanks, you too. I think it's pretty clear to everybody that this may be a smooth night, and it may not be a smooth night, but it's been a very painful journey for anybody trying to pick up the pieces of a budget process that kind of fell apart in the middle. And really, we still have no guarantee that we have a town meeting. Hopefully we will. And so as we go through this process, we are going through it with a mind to, we're going to have a town meeting and we're going to have a budget, and we know that we're going to be revisiting it again in November. So while nobody is happy with the budget that's going to be being presented, I don't know whether that's a good or bad thing. Everybody's bearing the pain. So we'll see how it all plays out. But in the meantime, all right. So Heather, do you want to present on the budget, or do you think it's best that we start to move through the articles in order, since they all pretty much feed into the?
Whatever your pleasure is, the board's pleasure.
Does anybody have a preference? My guess is that if we start to move through it from the first one, we'll get to Article 5, and then just probably bring up the budget presentation at that point in whole. And so we'll just take them in order that way. So we have some sense of, when we go through our recommendations, we'll have some sense of what order we want to go in. So Peter, if you could cue up Article A, please. Okay, so basically Article A, I think we usually just say that there's no financial impact because it's just town reports, and I don't, just to waste time on a Thursday evening, and this may be a waste of time, I'm sorry. What does that even mean? Because we've never heard reports.
Yeah, it's always on there as an option, and can be if, say, a committee or board didn't submit a report for the annual report, that's an opportunity as well. It's just an annually recurring article on all warrants.
So if a committee wanted to make a report, they could do that at that time.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, B.
Start.
Again, if anybody has a question, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if anybody does have any questions at any time through this process, again, please raise your hand in the participant window. I might not see it in the picture window. I have many things open here to try to track everything. So, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Heather.
So the Article B is the revolving fund spending limits. We have now, which was a change in law, was to create a bylaw as a requirement on which we did at a previous town meeting for all revolving funds, but we're still required to annually adopt the spending limits. And these are the same spending limits as the previous year.
Michelle?
Just a question, maybe more for the public, but how does a revolving fund work?
Essentially, it's money in, money out. So it's receipts in are supposed to cover the specified purpose, and those are all laid out in the bylaw, what the purpose of the account is for and what the receipts, the income is from. And so it's not like a money maker kind of situation. It's supposed to be kind of money in, money out. And
Okay, thank you.
welcome.
Okay, C?
C is for prior year expenses, and we have 2 invoices that total $476.21, I believe the amount is. And so that has to be voted at town meeting because they're previous years.
And when you say previous year, that's FY19.
There's one of them that make it go further back than that came to light because it's an account that's shared by multiple departments. It hadn't showed up as far as outstanding balance. So
Michelle? Did you just not take your hand down? No. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay. D.
D is the amendment to the current year's fiscal budget. Right now, there are no proposed amendments to the budget. We should be able to cover everything within our end of year interdepartmental transfers.
Even if it snows this weekend?
Yes.
Okay. E,
E is, the police union collective bargaining agreement that was passed over at the fall town meeting based on advice from council. And after reviewing that again, that council advice changed that even though it's a zero sum appropriation, it still needs to be voted.
okay. Does anybody have any questions on that one? No. Okay, F,
F is the capital plan. And as the committee knows, that has been pared down from the original capital plan. So that includes 11 projects for a total of $664,800.
all right, so that one's already been cut in half in order to create a cushion going into the new year, and currently is only financed through free cash.
Free cash, correct.
Mr. Passios,
You're muted, Dave.
Dave Passios. I don't have the list in front of me right at the moment, but one of the items that I had mentioned last week that I thought could be deferred had to do with the equipment for one of the ambulances for the paramedic level. With the postponement of hiring an additional firefighter, I have to assume that pushes off us going to paramedic level, possibly a full year, unless it gets added back in November. So why aren't we deferring that also to November? We're buying equipment that we're not going to be able to use for possibly up to 3, maybe 4 years.
You have to check with the chief to see what the lead time on all of that is. The equipment is similar to some other pieces of equipment. Sometimes it takes a year.
Right, but if my assumption is correct, putting off hiring that firefighter in 2021 is going to push us off at least a year, if not 2, before we're ready for paramedic level. And even if we add it back in November, add the equipment back in November when we see things are a little bit rosier, that makes sense to me. Owning the equipment and having it sit in a closet for 2 years makes no sense. My personal opinion.
I would have to check with the fire chief.
That
any other questions on that one?
I do. Terry, I can't raise my hand when I'm co-hosting.
No, I understand, yes.
So a follow up to Dave's question, and then I have a second question. That my understanding is that it wouldn't. It's probably not accurate to say it would be sitting in a closet someplace. It's still useful equipment. It's not equipment that is required for EMT certified level services. Is that a fair characterization?
From my understanding, and again, we'd have to verify it with the chief, I think some of it is not usable unless you're certified paramedic level, but
Okay.
that would need to be verified.
Okay. Because we have individuals who are certified paramedics, so I'd be curious as to whether there's a benefit to carrying it or not. Okay, my second question is there was conversation in one of the meetings that I just did the minutes for, so it was either the 13th or 27th of February, when we looked at the original capital plan, and there was a discussion about certain items that may warrant requests for earmarks from the legislature, recognizing the fact that cash is not going to be as available as it's been in past years. But there was supposed to have been a conversation at the Board of Selectmen about what we would be petitioning the legislature for earmarked funding, and I never saw or heard from that. Was there a discussion to that effect?
And what meeting?
It was a conversation that we had, I believe, on February 13th, when you presented the capital plan to us originally. And I asked the question then, are there any items on this capital plan list that we could potentially look for some sort of relief from the state in the way of an earmark or grant or what have you? The culvert project comes immediately to mind. And you had indicated in that meeting that there was a intended follow-up discussion with the Board of Selectmen about what of these items, if anything, are worth inquiring from our legislative delegation.
Yes, so I'd have to look back and see what was submitted. Because we did, the board did discuss that and voted on a list.
Yeah, I mean, it's not super urgent, but I think we should
It
at
doesn't,
least know.
It's an important consideration. I think the other, I guess my concern at this point would be if we see any earmarks, it would be, I think, somewhat miraculous
right.
this year, just because, I'm not sure that people are going to be able to plug stuff on there. But if they are, then yeah, that would be a good piece of information to have. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Oh, Mr. Passios. Unmute yourself, please.
You're muted, Dave.
Dave, you're talking to yourself.
Sorry, I did that because I didn't want you to hear paper shuffling for 5 minutes. Dave Passios again. Not directly related to the capital plan, but there is an article later on that we're going to be looking at, and that's the streetlight article. And I'm very concerned, number one, that it's not earlier in the warrant, because if it follows the budget already being approved, then there's extreme limitations on what can be used for funds to fund that article. Presently, it's going to town meeting floor, at least as of today, with no funding backing it, which means that either it's got to be agreed on before we go to town meeting, or it goes on to town meeting floor with no funding, and town meeting either says we're going to use this money from here, or they don't approve it because there's no money budgeted for it or allocated for it from whatever source.
Okay.
I just felt I should make that comment because I think, number one, I think it should have been in the list of capital items to begin with. We've been working on this project for how many years now? I think I've been involved with it for at least 3 or 4 years, off and on. And it's a capital expense. And very appropriate for free cash also, because it is the purchase of the infrastructure is a one-time deal. So I intend to push for this really hard going into town meeting, and between now and then figure out what needs to get bumped or where the money's going to come from to pay the roughly $90,000 to $100,000 to make this first step. It's a value-added project. All of these other projects, yeah, they get us to a point, or they buy us equipment, but they don't give us a year-over-year savings like going into the streetlight project. Thank you.
Karen, you had your hand up. Did you want to jump in?
No, I'm all set. But I guess the only thing I wanted to say about the fire department equipment is the funding source for that is free cash, and he's not going to purchase anything until he's ready to do so. And we have the free cash now, so I mean,
I think right. Yeah, no, I understand your point, and I also understand that Dave's also looking to see where we could fund streetlights. So
I get both. That's why I lowered my hand too.
Right. Okay. All right.
I mean, there's one project on there that I really believe could be pushed off a full year, and I've said it last Thursday in my list of adjustments, and that was the asbestos removal and or the AC design. Actually, It's not that one because that's only 10,000. There was another one, but in any case, I made my point earlier. We'll discuss it some more when we get to the streetlight article.
Okay. Okay, then we are at G.
I did hear, sorry.
I was just going to say, is this where you would like us to bring up your budget presentation?
Yeah, I was going to follow up on the question about the ALS equipment and the additional firefighter. If we were able to fund the additional firefighter in the fall, we would still be able to apply for a paramedic license fiscal 21.
But if we don't, then we are pushed off to 22 and
Mhm.
okay, that's fine. As long as we don't have the equipment sitting around for an additional year, hopefully the chief would wait until November to purchase the equipment and wait and see if he gets his firefighter, but that's his call. Assuming it passes in the capital budget.
Yeah, I think that there's no reason why there couldn't be a hold on the purchase until the November meeting to see if the position is approved. I think that could happen, and then we could talk in November about if that frees up the funds or if those funds are going to be being used. Or would we have to make, because we're making that appropriation, we could not change that appropriation? Would that be?
My understanding is it's free cash, so if we put it off, we would have to move it into stabilization, so we'd be able to pull it back out again in November. That would be the effect of being, saving the money for the time being unappropriated, but it would need to sit in a account where it's actually appropriated to the reserve account.
Correct.
Okay. All right, so are we moving into your presentation? No? Yes? I couldn't tell what you had said.
Could I ask one question before you start, Heather? What are your thoughts on my concern about an article that, number one, doesn't have any funding behind it, and number two, is dependent on funding that's potentially in the budget coming after the budget's approved on town meeting floor? That's problematic, isn't it?
No, because the source would be free cash for stabilization. So, and the budget isn't using free cash or stabilization monies.
Okay, but what would we do if we, I'll have to think this through some more. Let's move on. Thank you.
Okay.
Bear with me, I'm downloading stuff here, so give me.
Okay.
30
I think what I was
seconds.
thinking about while he's downloading is that the budget is going to deposit money into stabilization. So potentially we could deposit into stabilization in this article. And then once we get down to streetlights, if we decide we want to use free cash, then we're going to immediately pull it back out of stabilization, either regular stabilization or special purpose to fund that article.
Yeah, we would have to explain that at town meeting, but
Right.
I mean, the budget isn't closed until the meeting's over. So.
And the other question is, if you don't put a dollar, there's going to have to be a dollar amount attached to that when it goes on the town meeting floor.
The motion would have to have, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Heather, you want your presentation?
Yes, please. All right. So as Terry had indicated, this is definitely a unique year. This is my fourth year presenting to the committee, and this year's public hearing presentation will definitely be substantially different from previous fiscal years. So this presentation will focus more on the differences between the original recommended budget in March and the revised recommended budget that's being presented tonight in light of the economic impact from COVID-19 and what it will have the impact on our next year's budget. I'll go to the next slide. So just to reiterate the timeline, we started discussions in July of 2019. The Capital Planning Committee met in September of 2019 and met with the departments in November and December. The town manager sent target budgets to departments in December that were due back the beginning of January. The Capital Planning Committee finalized their prioritization of projects for the fiscal 21 plan on January 7th. And I presented the capital plan and the 5-year financial forecast at the end of January and the preliminary budget in mid-February. And we're here today due to the economic impact as a result of COVID-19 with a revamped budget that we started reviewing from mid-March until now. Next slide, please. So in preparing the fiscal 21 recommendation, before COVID-19, the goal was to create a balanced budget that funded operating budgets using recurring revenues at current service levels, with some exceptions. When developing a budget in a stable economic environment, these three phrases are appropriate, ones I've used in previous presentations. Expenditures are a reflection of the cost of providing a level of services to residents of all ages in our community, to visitors traveling or doing business in Lunenburg, and maintaining or improving our assets. As a town, we provide services to students, we provide health and human services to seniors and veterans, recreational services, and public safety to all. The balance is to provide the best services possible given the available resources, maintain our assets, and put aside funding for anticipated capital and into our rainy day fund. Next slide, please. So in the current environment, in order to address the economic uncertainties and the impact on our revenues, the effect of not being able to include all of the priority needs of various departments will have an impact on the level of services. The current recommendation creates an excess levy capacity of $1,055,950 by postponing new positions and certain expenditures in order to absorb the decline in revenues beyond a level funded local receipt amount and state aid amount. The current recommendation does not represent the needs of the various departments, and it does not fully meet the town's financial policies. But it does not use certified free cash on the operating budget, which should be, in my opinion, is a cardinal rule when balancing a budget. Next slide, please.
Can I ask a question here?
Mm-hmm.
Are we not levying to the limit here? Is that what we're doing?
It includes the available tax levy. That's what the excess levy capacity is. But at town meeting, the tax revenue proportion will be $1,055,000 less than the max levy.
Why wouldn't we levy to the limit, put that money in stabilization or someplace else, and then appropriate what's left in November? I mean, the whole purpose of this is if we're underfunded for some reason in the first 2 quarters of the year, we're going to need that money. So, or even if we are fully funded, we're going to allocate that money in November to another purpose. So why would we not set a tax rate that is at the full 2.5% rather than the second half of the year? All of a sudden, people are going to see a substantial bump in their taxes in the second half of the year because we didn't levy to the limit in the first half.
Their first tax bill will be estimated tax bill anyways.
But actually, let me just ask what might be a clarifying question. When you're talking about the excess levy capacity of $1,055,950, that's the amount of cushion that's being left, right?
Yes.
And that's leaving it's not leaving the 2.5% tax increase on the table. It's leaving the amount of what you would have budgeted for capital. Actually, no, Peter, no, you know what? I might actually be misunderstanding this whole thing, but it was my understanding that the tax increase will still be 2.5%, but we're reducing the amount that we anticipate is coming in from the state, and we're reducing the amount that we anticipate is coming in from local receipts, and we're reducing the amount that we anticipate will be coming in order to fund the capital plan. But it was my understanding that we were still taxing for it. But that's not true?
We're taxing for everything that's being proposed in the budget.
So that $1 million cushion, and maybe that's what I need to go back and see, that the revenues still include the 2.5% tax increase over last year plus new growth. Yes? When you wrote the revenues, that number was still 2.5%. You didn't reduce that amount.
Right.
We're still projecting revenues, including the 2.5% tax
Yes.
increase. Okay.
Yes.
So why are we referring to this as excess levy capacity?
Because we're not using that yet into the fall in case we need to balance the budget in the fall due to declined state aid and local receipts.
But I think what Peter's after is, in effect, if we do this, then it skews the estimate for the first 2 quarters and gives us a huge bump if we allocate or appropriate that entire $1 million in November. Is that a correct assessment?
Well, it's still not clear to me if we're taxing to the levy limit or not. I think the answer to the question that was just answered is yes. That's the answer to the question. If that's the case, then it's semantics as to whether this is in fact excess levy capacity or not. But this doesn't fit the definition of excess levy capacity that Karen explained to us a couple of months ago. So I'd appreciate some kind of clarification.
Karen wanted to pop back in on this one.
Well, I mean, it is excess levy capacity at this point in time. We don't set the tax rate until December. So your tax bill will not be affected. Like as of right now, the way that the budget is voted for FY21, your first 2 quarters of your FY21 taxes are based on whatever happened in FY20. We don't set the tax rate until December, which will be after the special town meeting. And the $1 million that you see sitting there is excess of what we can raise in taxes because we have made cuts everywhere else to make up for that difference. So the more we get from other places and the more we decide to appropriate, like if we wanted to fully fund the capital plan and appropriate the free cash, blah, blah, blah. Those other revenues are available to us and will be adjusted at the special town meeting in the fall. So definitely
If they're
a
not
portion of that $1 million is excess levy capacity at this point in time.
But if those other sources don't come in, then basically, then those funds are all raised through the 2.5% increase because we
Right. I mean,
accommodate.
we're going to levy to the capacity no matter what.
Right.
But right now, if you're looking at the reason why we have the surplus is because of not appropriating all of our capacity at this point in time.
Michelle?
I think Karen just said the word I was trying to get out there. I think that 1 million, that's the budget surplus, yes?
Correct.
Right. So we're not changing the tax structure. We're just leaving some left over on the budget. It's the budget surplus. It's just a different way of saying it without using levy capacity.
Which I understand.
Okay.
I totally understand that. The problem is when you use the phrase excess levy capacity, it insinuates that it's taxation that you're not doing in the current budget year, and therefore you're leaving additional capacity for later on in a subsequent budget year to add on top of your regular 2.5% levy limit. So I think that while it may be technically correct, and certainly defer to the experts, it's incredibly misleading.
In my eyes, it did.
If it's any consolation, in the finance committee letter, if you've had a chance to read it, I wrote it in as a surplus. I did not.
I know you did. I know you
Okay.
did.
All right, just to be clear.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a matter of terminology. My thought process for the last few years has been that it doesn't become excess levy capacity until you don't appropriate it at fall town meeting and you set the tax limit without appropriating it. And then it carries into the next year as excess capacity. But it's just on how far you stretch the definition.
Yeah, fair enough. And I don't want to, it's going to be a long night, so I don't want
Yeah.
It's also called.
it could-
that we voted
In December, it could be.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I
had
missed
$3
what Heather said.
No, I was saying it's also, that's the terminology that's used when we have a special town meeting, that we have excess levy capacity
To
to.
appropriate at that meeting.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Welcome. Next slide, please. And you can move on to the next one after that. So the original recommended budget revenues for property taxes included adding 2.5% to the previous year's levy. It used twice reduced the new growth amount and was at 193,400 for new growth before the impact of COVID-19, and the debt exclusion amounts known at that point. State aid included the governor's House 1 figure, which was a 2.28% increase. Local receipts were estimated at 2.27% increase over the previous fiscal year, which we historically always budget conservatively for our local receipts since they're elastic revenues. And for other available funds, it used $889,000 from free cash to offset the capital plan, OPEB, and the regular stabilization account. Also included funds from the MSBA reimbursement, the artificial turf field revolving fund, and all the enterprise accounts: water, sewer, solid waste, and PAC. Next slide, please. To highlight some of the expenditures in the original recommended budget for general government, it added additional hours for the assistant town clerk. It addressed below minimum wages for election and census and registration salaries. It included new voting booths and an increase in IT software costs. It added additional hours for the Board of Health administrative assistant, included funds for an additional full-time police officer, and just to denote that bottom line at the end of their budget was less due to other cuts in their budget than the target budget, I should denote. The fire department included funds for an additional firefighter. The DPW included an additional $50,000 for pavement management, an additional $27,000 for ADA infrastructure, and it cut the assistant mechanic position. The Lunenburg Public Schools included a 2.5% increase, or $520,000 over their previous fiscal year. Next slide, please. For in the original recommended budget for non-operating expenditures, the capital plan was being recommended at $1,329,133. $650,000 of that from tax revenues and $679,133 from free cash. It included depositing $110,000 into the OPEB trust fund, $100,000 into the regular stabilization fund per town policy, and had an allowance of $175,000 for abatement and exemptions. Next slide, please. So for the revised budget, the property taxes includes adding 2.5% to the previous year's levy. It uses a reduced amount of new growth in the amount of $173,400, and the debt exclusion amounts with the latest figures. State aid is the current recommendation level funds the state aid number from the fiscal 20 amount, but it addresses a potential reduction in state aid by including that surplus, I'll call it, of over 10%. Local receipts, the current recommendation level funds local receipts from the fiscal 20 amount. And as a good financial practice, the town administration has purposely conservatively estimated the local receipts. And we feel that this number is sufficient because of that, estimating those conservatively. Other available funds, it uses free cash for non-operating budget items and uses $14,000 less in this revised budget of free cash due to the change in the capital plan. Other sources of available funds are relatively similar to the original, the previous year, except for the sale of cemetery lots and PEG funds for indirect costs. This slide is just shows the original estimated receipts versus the revised figures. So property tax, state aid, local receipts, and other available funds.
Okay, and the revised property tax number is related to new growth.
New growth as well as the debt exclusion amounts.
Okay, thank you.
Next slide, please. For the revised fiscal 21 expenditures, includes level funding, the cherry sheet offset numbers, state and county charges, and school choice and charter assessments from the FY20 amounts. The general government, it eliminates, the added hours for the assistant town clerk and eliminates $18,000 in the IT budget that we're able to fund out of this year's budget. For the Board of Health, it eliminates the added hours for the Board of Health administrative assistant. It postpones the additional full-time police officer, and it postpones the additional full-time firefighter. It defers the additional $50,000 for pavement management and additional $27,000 for ADA infrastructure, and cuts $25,000 from the stormwater costs. The general insurance number changed. It was reduced by $9,000, and the debt schedule is adjusted by $109,000 according to the final bond and ban amounts for the ladder truck, Saliba property, middle school, high school project, and pavement management project. The Lunenburg Public Schools is decreased to 1.58% or $328,000 over the previous fiscal year. Next slide, please. Expenditures that are the same as the original recommendation include the contractual union and non-salary increases. The DPW, it still eliminates the assistant town mechanic position. It still has the reduction in electricity costs. It still has the reduction in central purchasing. The health insurance number is maintained. Originally we started out back in December with a target budget of 6.5% increase, and now our budget reflects the actual renewal of a 0.66%, which is great and very timely this year. I'm glad we were able to get such a good rate.
Can I interrupt for just a second on this page? Just want to make a comment so the public's aware. The DPW position is a position that was not presently occupied, that's being eliminated. I just don't want the people at home to think we laid somebody off, or we're going to. Thank you.
That's correct. The Monty Tech assessment, the target budget assumed a 2.5% increase, and the actual assessment was 14% increase, or $111,000 over the previous fiscal year. And the retirement assessment is still the same, the 11% increase, or $148,000 over the previous fiscal year. And tax title funds were level funded from fiscal 20. Next slide, please. The revised non-operating expenditures, the capital plan is now deferring $650,000 of capital projects from the original capital plan. And this is in order to create a greater surplus that would address deficits in the fall. And the recommendation is to use $664,800 of free cash towards capital items on July 1st and address the deferred projects in the fall. It defers $110,000 deposit into OPEB until the fall town meeting. The stabilization fund, it reallocates the $110,000 that would have went into OPEB and adds that to the $100,000 deposit into the regular stabilization fund, totaling $210,000. And this is our rainy day fund, access at a later date. For allowance for abatements, the amount was reduced based on a review of the balance of funds needed in this account, and that number was reduced to the $120,000. Next slide, please. Now, this is a little hard to read. Numbers are small in this, but this is a updated debt schedule as of today. We have the final bond numbers. We went out to bond for the middle school, high school project, and we received the debt schedule. So these numbers reflect those final numbers. We got what I think is a terrific rate, 1.99% for that bond. And so I saw that as a good sign of the strength of our financial situation, given this kind of unstable market right now. So this also reflects updated numbers for the Saliba property and the ladder truck. Those originally we were gonna bond those projects. Those were banned. So these amounts, there was a reduction in those estimates. So total debt schedule, and I'll get to a little later in the updated worksheets that I sent out too. You'll see those amounts. Next slide, please. This is a depiction of the revised capital plan that deferred the other 10 projects. So the capital plan recommendation originally included 21 projects that were prioritized by the capital planning committee they had a total of 28 capital requests for over $4 million in requests. And the original plan was for $1,329,133. And this revised plan, the capital planning committee met again, reviewed the budget by that had removed the $650,000 that was to be raised and appropriated for the capital plan, and just the source of funding would just be free cash. And this was the revised list that they came up with. Any questions? All right, next slide, please. So conclusions drawn from this recommended budget. The public hearing recommended budget is radically different than the recommended budget from the beginning of March. It postpones decisions on the new public safety positions and added hours for the town clerk assistant and the Board of Health administrative assistant, payment management and ADA funds into the fall town meeting. It defers capital projects originally in the fiscal 21 capital plan and the deposit into the OPEB trust fund into the fall town meeting. It funds existing staff contractual obligations and non-union and union salary increases, and uses recurring revenues for operating costs with no draw on stabilization or free cash for the operating expenses. There's a net loss of one town employee position, which is not a layoff. It's just the funding for that position is being removed. It includes a 1.58% increase for the Lunenburg Public School, includes 2 new positions, and the recommended budget does not meet the needs of the town. Recommended budget leaves an excess levy capacity or surplus of $1,055,950 that will insulate any revenue decline beyond the level funded amounts for local receipts and state aid figures.
Mr. Passios?
Yes, my specific question is a line item, and I'm assuming that number is available, but if not, we can get it at a later date. And that is the number that, or the increase, if there is such, in the salary reserve line item.
The salary reserve was level funded from last year.
Okay, thank you.
Next slide, please. So COVID-19 doesn't change the fact that this budget does not address the staffing needs for our public safety departments, which during times like these, we rely on more heavily, and there'll be an increased need in services for. Although it defers such things like adding the planned 50,000 into pavement management and 27,000 into ADA, these infrastructure needs do not go away.
Mhm.
The postponement of capital projects does not mean those projects are still not necessary. And the postponement of putting money into OPEB doesn't address our growing liability, in that bond rating companies include not funding this liability as a weakness when reviewing the town's debt. Next slide, please. In looking ahead, there's still a number of uncertainties related to state revenues and the impact on state aid and the long-term impact of COVID-19 on the overall budget and how it will impact the need for additional services such as public safety, health services, food insecurity for vulnerable populations, outreach to seniors, and educational needs. State officials have given no indication of what the state consensus budget will look like and have said that it could drag out past July 1st to see what that represents for state aid. State officials have relayed that towns will be able to apply for FEMA and CARES Act funding for any deficits related to COVID-19 that are not budgeted in both fiscal 20 and fiscal 21. And we will continue to pay close attention to our actual and estimated versus estimated revenues and expenditures and make the necessary adjustments at the fall special town meeting. And that is the end of my presentation.
And then I would actually, following up on Peter and Dave's comments, I would make the recommendation to go back and rather than make the reference to
Excess levy.
thank you, excess levy capacity to call it a surplus, and then basically not talk about it as excess levy capacity unless there's a determination not to add anything back into the budget, and we do have all of those monies back in the fall. That would just be my recommendation in order to make it more easily understandable for people who aren't in the archaic language business of mass municipal law regulations and definitions. So.
Or new to the finance committee.
I'm sorry. Sorry?
Or people who are new to the finance committee.
We don't
No,
know anybody
actually,
like
it's got
that,
nothing
Rich.
to do with being new to the finance committee. There's a lot of archaic language. I mean, if John hadn't gone through and did all of the definitions for a glossary for us when we were doing the finance policies, we never would have got anywhere. Mr. Passios, you have your hand up.
Yep, I just had one comment as to the information about the concern about public safety being busier than normal because of COVID-19. I've actually spoken with people in those types of positions from other towns, and some of them are saying that it's actually quieter, at least right now. Yeah, they've got a few extra ambulance runs for sick people that possibly are COVID and need transportation. But because of the inactivity of the general public, there's been a pretty much a reduction. And I don't know if we've seen that in Lunenburg or not. I'd be interested, and I would believe the selectmen would be interested in just a brief analysis from the fire and police department as to whether their number of calls have climbed during the last, say, 4 to 6 weeks or 8 weeks, or if it's been not much more than business as usual by numbers of calls.
I can answer that because I've talked to both chiefs on a regular basis. They have seen they have not seen an increase in calls at this time. And I think it is because partially for fire, for the ambulance, people have not really chosen to go to the hospital or call. They had a situation where they'd had to respond to a call, but the person chose, they didn't want to be transported to the hospital. They just wanted to be checked out. And situations like that. But and for police, same. They haven't seen a huge spike in calls, but I anticipate the longer this goes on, that we would see more crimes and violent acts.
Right. Interestingly, the on the national level, there's a report out, and I forget the percentages, but automobile or highway deaths has risen dramatically, even though there isn't anywhere near as much traffic.
I saw that same
that's
article.
pretty scary.
Yeah.
Michelle?
Just so I don't make assumptions, what parts of the financial policy are not being met by this budget?
The OPEB policy.
Okay, that's the only one?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, as of right now, we are hitting the stabilization account and actually exceeding the amount into the stabilization account, but that's so that we may end up drawing from the stabilization account. But yeah, the only one that we're not really hitting is OPEB. Any other questions on the budget presentation itself? I have either Phyllis or Carl Luck. Are you unmuted, or do I need to unmute you?
They are muted.
Okay.
All set now.
Thank you, Carl. This is Carl Luck, 50 Sunset Lane. I have a question on the artificial turf line item, and I don't know. It's on the revenue side, $40-something thousand, and I don't know how that works. Is that real revenue that gets used somewhere, or because it's still going up, and it's not level funded, or so? Could I understand what that revenue source is and where that money goes?
That's the so the revenue source is from a cell tower, and that agreement was made with the understanding that those revenues would offset that artificial turf debt payment every year. So it goes into a revolving fund in order to pay that debt.
Excellent. Thank you. So because I didn't know if it was, because don't we get some revenue from or the school or somebody get some revenue from the athletic fields?
I believe that the way that works, and Karen can correct me if I'm wrong, unless Heather comes back. But basically, there are rentals of the fields that are used to supplement that, and it's I believe it's, although I haven't looked at it, I believe it exists as a line in the expenses on revenues and expenses from the school budget, that they also allot a portion of their budget to the expense of the field.
Okay. That makes sense. So they have to deal with the reduced revenue if we don't have athletic events in their portion.
I believe that's correct, yes. Karen's nodding,
Good.
so I'm taking that as a
Okay. I like it when Karen nods. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the budget, the total presentation? I know when we get to the specific warrant articles, there may be more. So, Peter, did you fall off, or did you just change your picture?
No, I'm here. I just went to get something to drink. So I'm back.
You didn't want us to see what you were drinking? Okay, so if you could, if you could bring up then we're back to the warrant articles, or did you need to go over any more of the budget information, Heather?
Probably it's a good time to go over those two worksheets since we're on the budget.
Okay. Do you have those, Peter, or you need to download?
Yeah, so I've got the so-called dashboard, and I've got the detailed one. Which one would you like?
The dashboard, the adjustments one. All right, so today's adjustments to the revenue side include the final figures for the excludable debt for the pavement management in the middle high school project, which was from the estimates that were provided last week, is a reduction of $11,959.06. And the insertion of the rest of the PAC enterprise budget onto the revenue side. So it already had in there 17,324. So adding in the 173,676 brings it to the 191. That's their whole budget. On the sorry,
I'm sorry. I just wanted to, for the purpose of clarification, you've made reference to PEG and PAC, and I wonder if you could just explain to people who might not know what that is.
Public access is the PAC
The
budget.
public access cable is the PAC. When you referred to PEG, that was the education. What does that stand for? But that's also related to the cable.
Public education government. That's what. All under public access. On the, you're welcome. The expenditure side, on the flip side for the debt exclusion, it's also that amount, the 11,959.06 is reduced on the debt schedule, as well as this includes the updated debt figures for the Saliba ladder truck van, and that reduces the debt schedule by another $26,779.69. And on the expenditure side, the 143 for public access, their enterprise portion, because the indirect costs are only on the revenue side. They're already included in the budget and expenditure side. So, and the other sheet, and you'll see the surplus on the second page of that, sorry. It will be at the bottom of this too. So,
Where do you want me? Where do you want to be on this?
if you just can zoom in on the left-hand side, yes. So the highlighted cell, that reflects the updated debt exclusion amount with the bond payment schedule that we now have. Those are the final figures. And if you scroll down, the 191 for public access is highlighted. I'll keep going right there. And on the expenditure side, the two highlighted, that those are the new revised figures in the maturing debt and in the interest payments reflected there. And on the bottom is the expenditure side for the public access enterprise account.
Does anyone have any questions or comments or concerns on any of these items? Okay. Seeing none, then we can probably then go ahead and go back to the warrant articles and go through them more in depth.
All right. So we were on G. Now we're on H. So the selectmen on Tuesday night removed H and I, which were the two collective bargaining agreements that we had hoped would be done for town meeting pre-COVID-19. But right now negotiations are at a halt. So we're going to postpone this to a later date, and hopefully we can do these at the fall town meeting. Finalize those. J is the stabilization fund. So as it stands now, the recommendation is to deposit 210,000 out of free cash into the stabilization fund.
Mhm.
Okay. That article was removed on Tuesday night by the board of selectmen. That was the OPEB trust fund article. We're deferring that into the fall. L is a fiscal 20 budget adjustment for the sewer enterprise, which I talked to the business manager today. They don't expect to have any adjustments, but would like to keep it on in the event something changes between now and town meeting. M is their actual budget that you heard their presentation last week. Sewer enterprise. N is the deposit into their capital reserve fund, into the sewers capital reserve fund for 30,000. O is the sewers deposit into OPEB of $656.
Can I interrupt for just a second?
Mhm.
Those amounts are derived from revenue through the sewer billing. Is that correct?
Retained earnings.
Retained earnings from revenue, incoming revenue. Okay, thank you.
And P is the solid waste disposal program that is for 302,000, same as fiscal 20. Q is the water enterprise for 25,000, same as fiscal 20. R is the public access or public educational government enterprise for 191,000. S, that article was removed. They don't, the public access enterprise account doesn't have sufficient funds to fund the capital budget, but they expect to take that up in the fall.
Heather, is that because the revenues from Comcast come in segments?
I believe so. Karen, is that?
I just wanted to say, the reason why they don't have the money right now to fund their capital, the cash is actually in their account, but because they transitioned to an enterprise fund last year, they have to wait for retained earnings to be certified by DOR before they're available for appropriation. So they will have the money in the fall to fund the capital portion of their budget. It is there now, but just paperwork through the state, the retained earnings need to be certified to be appropriated.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
T is the amendment to the salary administration plan to insert those positions into the plan. It's the plan itself that shows the grades and positions. U is the article that from the Board of Selectmen regarding the old primary school building.
This one's kind of like, okay, so the comment that's made and the discussion around this is that this is to authorize the Board of Selectmen to solicit and secure estimates, but not do anything, so there's no cost attached to it.
Correct. It's
Okay.
more advisory than anything. But I think it may present what those demolition costs and possible design costs would be,
If I could
Does
interject,
the-
but
What-
not
well,
fund it.
go ahead.
all right, let me just, okay, so basically, does the Board of Selectmen have to ask to the town to be assigned to get estimates to that
No.
effect? Okay, so this is just putting the finger in the wind to see which way it's blowing about whether or not we're going to demolish the primary building?
Could I speak to that?
Leave up,
Sure,
yeah.
Dave, go ahead.
Heather, if you have an answer, go ahead. And then I was just going to make a comment on part of the discussion from the BOS meeting Tuesday.
Go ahead.
Okay. One of the Board of Selectmen, and I honestly don't remember which one, while they were talking about this, kind of came across saying that, this is one of their primary goals for this year. And it was the way this article was worded and brought forward was a failure of that goal. This is not what I don't believe what was the original intent when they set the goal, but it doesn't accomplish that goal, and that's why they're considering taking it out.
Oh, are they considering taking it out?
Is that correct, Heather, or did they decide to leave it?
They're waiting till Tuesday to take a vote on this
Okay.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
one.
It seems eerily reminiscent of what we covered in the fall. Like it,
Yeah.
Yes,
much more than
another no move forward article.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So V is the home rule petition that the Library Board of Trustees brought forth. And you heard that presentation from the director. W is to hear interim report from the TCP Building Design Committee and our representatives from the firm.
I do believe we'll have some type of report. We haven't really talked about that in length yet, but I think we will be at our next meeting.
Okay.
X and Y, you heard from Chief Marino for the kennel bylaw. Z is the CPA article, Community Preservation Act article. And Rebecca Lantry did come back before the board. They still, on behalf of the Historical Commission, still wish to pursue this, but reduce the percentage to 1%. And kept the exemption the same.
Michelle?
Has the select board agreed to leave the warrant, the article in the warrant?
They're I denoted all the ones they took recommendations on so far this last Tuesday. The rest, they're waiting till their coming meeting on this coming Tuesday, the 12th.
All right. I asked because I had some questions for Ms. Lantry. I emailed her them and I never heard back. I had told her if she was presenting tonight, she could wait until then, but I don't see her here. So I do have some follow-up questions about this. So, all right. Thank you for the info.
Mr. Passios?
Yes, I'll have more information sometime between now and town meeting, maybe on town meeting 4. But I've had discussions with a couple of people that have been on CPA committees in other towns, one specifically Groton, and I'm working on a couple of others. And there are some issues with the limitations of the percentages that you can spend that are in your accounts, and they can only be spent for that. There are some accounts that Groton finds that there's money going in there every year, and they really don't have an appropriate project for that money. So it's just sitting there and growing. And the person I talked to doesn't really know how they could possibly move that money and use it for some other purpose once this is put in place.
Michelle?
Just to follow up on your comment, Dave, one of the questions I had for her is, what do you have a plan for this money? Are there projects that are at top of mind that you want to use this money for? And, because I have a hard time supporting something that doesn't have anything actionable on it.
Go finish, Michelle, and I'll make a comment.
Especially
Sorry.
since it's on top of taxes. So I'm just sort of trying to understand that. And then the other thing was, it says there's exclusions in there based on low income or middle income for seniors. And, do they need to apply for those exclusions, or do they automatically exclude them? And I had a couple of other questions as well. So I do have some concerns about this one.
Yeah, those are great questions. With what I've heard is our residents in Lunenburg, 30% of them being senior citizens. So there'd be a sizable number there looking for those benefits. Okay, I drew a blank.
Well, the question then that I'm just going to interject before I draw a blank is can we take action on Z without taking action to create a bylaw to create the Community Preservation Commission? Do you know, Heather?
It says right in here on the side.
Well, it says there needs to be one, but it doesn't say whether or not we can take action on one without the presence of the other.
The IGR on it says the town should adopt a bylaw at the same time as the enacting, or at least before the referendum question.
All right, so basically, but we wouldn't create the bylaw until we knew whether the town was accepting. All right, so if we accept the Community Preservation Act, funds will start to be withdrawn, or funds will start to be collected, and there will not be anything done with those funds until there's also then a bylaw created, and that's why we don't do it at the same time. This will then go to ballot, right? This goes to ballot if it's
passed at town meeting, it would have to go to ballot in the fall at the.
Yeah.
But the IGR, that the bylaw is supposed to be to create the committee at the same time as adopting at town meeting. That's how I understand it. I don't think that's how Rebecca Lantry understands it. I think he said by adopting that Mass General Law, it creates the committee, but that's not creating a bylaw. You'd have to have a separate article to create a bylaw.
Right. That was my question, because I guess I'm just confused whether or not we can actually then take any action on Z without the presence of an article creating a bylaw. And given that, is the Board of Selectmen leaving this in?
They'll take that vote today. I can't answer.
On Tuesday?
But if they're not
Okay.
aware of the one dependent on the other, they might vote it in, not knowing that the other component is not there. I think that's the point.
Yeah, I mean, basically where I get stuck on it is that, like I'm leaning to, given that there are the exemptions, and given that they've reduced the amount, and given the fact that I'm not sure that Lunenburg would have a tough time coming up with projects, certainly in the short term, that I would think that, like I'm leaning towards, I would support it, but then if it requires a bylaw to go along at the same time, then that would be a deterrent. But anyway, I'll let you continue on to AA.
Could I-
Unless anybody else is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my hand went down also, but I'll defer to Peter first.
Oh, I'm sorry, Peter. I keep forgetting that you can't.
No,
Okay.
no worries. There's a timeline associated with this, Heather, because this needs to be an election vote as well.
Yes.
And I recall that there's a window between the two, necessary window between the town meeting vote and the general election vote. In all reality, this is not something that will be enacted until the next spring town election. Is that a correct understanding?
It could be, if voted on this town meeting, it would have to be the next municipal or state election, which the next municipal state election would be fall.
So it is eligible for the fall election. Okay. I
Yeah.
was under the impression that for some reason it wasn't eligible to be.
You know, we checked with this, with the state on that, and it could be put on the state ballot.
Okay. So if this were to be deferred until fall town meeting, then it would
It would
we'd
then
be
have
kicking the
to
can
be,
down to
then it would be the spring annual election.
right. Okay. Understood.
Dave?
Yeah, two things. My feeling, kind of piggybacking on Michelle's comment about, what are the projects that we're saving this money for? I'd be much more prone to accept a capital exclusion for a small amount in 1 year, maybe even, for a smaller project of $100, $200, or $300,000. The effect on the tax rate would be, I haven't figured out the percentages, but it would be in the same realm as what they're talking about with the CPA. And we have a specific project that we have already identified and got a solid number for, and we're funding it with that exclusion. I'd be much more comfortable using that process rather than CPA. And then it doesn't limit you as you put that money into savings. It doesn't limit you as to what you can use it for. You're raising it for a specific purpose, and in this case, a capital purpose, and you fund it, and you're done paying for it in 1 year. Or if you
Right.
had to spread it out, it might be multiple years.
Okay. Peter?
Dave, I generally support your approach to capital exclusion spending. That being said, I think this achieves a different purpose. There's a practical issue with many of the types of projects that this presents an opportunity to fund. And a good example is all of these rights of first refusal opportunities for conservation land, where the timeline never falls in a way that would facilitate a capital exclusion, because it would have to fall within a certain timeline to do the town meeting thing and the general election vote to allow it to happen. And we wind up in the exact same situation we were in with the Saliba property and the property before that at last year's town meeting. You got a lot of people that are more than willing to go and borrow money against the operating budget and our levy capacity, but then are not going to be quite so eager to come out and vote for a capital exclusion. And I think that this is the kind of fund that enables the town to do the things that people at town meeting want to do without the additional friction that a capital exclusion brings.
My intent is to bring the information forward to town meeting, though, of the potential of money being required to be set aside for particular purposes that may never get used. So you could potentially have, one of these past members has told me there's $2 or $3 million sitting in an account that particular town will never have a use for. but they're required to set it aside because the CPA is set up that way.
And I understand the point, but I think you may be pulling some anecdotal information that is probably not applicable to Lunenburg in the situation that we're going to be in for the next 10 years, in particular with our buildings. You know, I mean, just the envelope issues, the relocation of town hall, what we're going to do with town hall and the Ritter building and the property that the primary school sits on and Marshall Park, and you can go on and on and on. I mean, you're potentially talking about tens of millions of dollars, and we're talking about a funding source that's going to, you know, potentially generate a few $100,000 a year.
All right, let me bring in Michelle. She's had her hand up.
You know, I can appreciate both sides of the coin. For me, I'll just reiterate that I don't feel like it's a tight plan. I want something a little more concrete. But the other thing I think we need to think about, I don't know if anyone had a chance to read Phyllis Luck's email. She did a lot of research on the CPA and what other towns adopted. And a point that she brought up in that email was the degree to which the funds get matched. When I first saw the presentation, it was presented that we do 3% and we'll get matched for 3% because we did 3%. And I may have misunderstood it, but Phyllis found something very different. The match isn't straightforward one-to-one. It happens in a tiered way. It happens over a succession of meetings. And it's clearly, there's no guarantee of matching. And even if there is, we then need to consider, does it match on what we've spent? So is it a reimbursement or does it give us money up front? Because I think there's a difference with that too. So for me, I just feel like there's still too many unanswered questions for me to support it.
Well, I think for me, all right, going to that piece of the discussion, and I will also go back to one of the goals of the Open Space Committee had a lot to do with, you know, the CPA was one of the things that was on their list of things to do as well. So I'm surprised that we never heard from them. But the notion of the matching is that there's no match at all if we don't put money up against it, and the funds are not available at all.
Right.
And we're not going to be able to pay for a lot of those projects if we don't have that pocket of money to draw from. So it also just makes, I mean, while the matching part and whether or not it's 100% match is important to a lot, there's basically no match at all if there's no funds coming out of the CPA. And I think, to me, that's an important piece. And again, I'm not as concerned that we don't have a lot of immediate uses agreed to for this because, and I have to agree with Peter on this, is that how many projects have we seen come up that are going to be immediate needs sooner than later that CPA could help ease some of the stress on the rest of the town budget or the town borrowing or anything else that comes up. I mean, I understand that a Community Preservation Act wouldn't necessarily be used for tearing things down like the primary building because that's not preservation. I get it. But in terms of renovating town hall for another use, yeah, probably. So, you know, there's a lot to be said for it either way. And I think basically, yeah. So however the presentation goes at town meeting, it will be interesting to see what the town is prepared to support. I think it was a good move on their part to reduce it to the 1% from the 3% in terms of trying to garner more support for it. But we'll see how it all plays out, and we'll see what the pleasure of the town is. And I'm sorry, go ahead, Michelle.
No, that's fine. I was not meant to interrupt you. I just, I don't know if anyone knows the answer to this, but they have to put together the committee, the Community Preservation Committee. Is it the committee alone that decides how that money is spent, or does it go out to the broader public to weigh in on what they want it spent on? Does anyone know the answer to that?
Heather?
Yeah, I believe They have to bring it back. The committee has to bring it back to town meeting to get voted on those projects.
Okay, I feel a lot better with that then. Okay, thank you. That makes a big difference to me.
Okay. So shall we move on to double A?
Double A
Yes, I think
is the streetlight article. And so, Dave, I think this will address your question about
Okay.
wording. It allows for both possibilities. This is the one you heard a presentation from Dave Blatt on, and their preference is to purchase them outright from Unitil. And
So is the motion going to then include the estimated cost of purchase from Unitil? Or will they not have that number because they'd have to get a quote from Unitil?
we have a quote from September, but obviously these numbers, I mean, they change daily, probably, as far as what they're saying their asset costs and the depreciation factored in all come to. And it takes, we had requested the purchase price in June and we got the purchase price in September. So that's how long it takes for them to give a response on that actual value. So I would guess that we would put in an amount that would be sufficient to cover in case that number increased beyond the 87,600 that we were quoted in September.
Heather, could it also be moved on town meeting floor to authorize up to an amount if there's seems to be a little bit of fuzziness as to the number? Say up to $100,000, which would.
I think it would have to be a definitive amount. Karen, probably you can answer this because that's going to be on the recap, right? As far as when we submit everything to DOR.
Well, and whatever, I mean, there has to be a dollar amount voted in the article. It could, you could put in $100,000 if you think that that's the maximum that it could be, but that would be the amount that we would have to deal with when setting the tax rate.
And then if it came in at 95,000, then you rescind 5,000 of it down the road.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
As I said before, I'm very concerned that we're headed towards town meeting without a clear picture of how this article will be funded. Even if we only purchase the streetlights for the first phase and something happens that we're not able to get green communities right away for the LED conversion, we're still going to save, Heather, if I got the right number in my head, $41,000 a year in maintenance costs if we take over ownership.
I thought it was
30 or 41?
30. I thought it was around 30.
Okay. I've got 41 in my head about something, but I don't remember what it was. But in effect, if we don't act, it's going to cost even more down the road because they're changing fixtures all the time. If we act now and even if we just buy the streetlights and own them and maintain them for the next few years, we save $30,000 a year is the estimate.
Okay, but we also anticipate, so you know, like I would like to make a recommendation tonight, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to because I'm going to imagine that at town meeting, not only will the amount of money need to be in there, but they'll have to make a determination at that point whether we're converting or whether we're buying, I would think.
Yeah.
I think you'll know that when it's moved on the floor, yeah, and we won't know until that time.
Right, yeah, so I think that that's going to happen, and I think, you know, so, and at that time, there will have to be discussion around where that money's coming from, and someone will have to move money from one warrant article or one number in the budget to support this. and see whether or not the town wants to take money from a capital item and put it there, or maybe even if, although, yeah, like, I'm not comfortable with the notion of doing this, but whether or not you could anticipate, okay, well, if there's 30,000 in savings, can you take that $30,000 and apply it against this and remove it from the operating budget to support this?
Heather,
Which
would
I
that
don't
be
know if
available
somebody-
as one of the sources to pay for it, or no?
I'm sorry, what was, I didn't hear you.
Taking the potential savings of $30,000 a year if we purchase the streetlights, that savings, and using it towards the funding of the purchase? Or is that using money before the horse?
Yeah, exactly. I think that wouldn't be very prudent.
Not to mention, you've got a trailing effect of having to apply for the grant before you make the change in the fixtures. And there's going to be a lag there of probably at least 6 months.
Right, but the
that's
grant
the
has nothing to
changing
do
of
with
the
the 30, the grant has nothing to do with the $30,000 savings.
Yeah,
Oh, correct.
30,000,
Fair
right.
enough. Right. The maintenance piece. I apologize.
Right.
You're right.
Yeah,
You would
yeah.
have to have a maintenance contract, so the cost of that would have to come out of the operating budget. The
Right.
still the
Okay.
But according to Dave's numbers, that would be covered by what we're already paying, less $30,000 a year, estimated that way.
That's what he's estimating.
Right.
So.
Yeah, Heather, we spoke about this the other day. We just kicked around. I believe it was 3 possible funding sources. One was to pull out of special purpose stabilization, the other out of regular stabilization, or use some free cash that we had floating out there. Were those the 3 that we came up with?
yes.
Okay. Or
Yeah, that is
deferring.
true. There is, yeah, if we had to, there is money in the capital stabilization plan.
Right.
Not that we want to, do anything with, but basically that would be something that could be a source, right?
But my point is that a $90,000 to $100,000 investment is going to pay for itself in 3 years or less.
Well, that's what we're hoping. Peter, you had a comment, question?
Yeah. As I'm looking at the budget, my feeling is that to what you alluded to earlier, Dave, this is capital. And it's a capital request that's certainly come out of sequence, and there's a fuse attached to it, but there's also a substantial cost savings associated with making this investment. And given the very constrained circumstances that we're operating under, my recommendation would be that we need to tweak the capital plan to be able to fund this.
And that was part of my comments earlier. I don't disagree with that, but I personally want to find some way by the end of the vote on town meeting floor to fund this article.
But I guess my question is for our purposes tonight, we're about to make recommendations on these articles. Would it make sense to defer on the capital plan subject to proposed amendments that we're going to make on the floor, or not?
I don't disagree with that.
Actually, Dave, let me go to Heather and then come back.
Yep.
Because in terms of procedural,
So for free cash, we still have available surplus free cash that we were planning on that balance falling towards the next year's to help next year's balance of free cash. So that is another possible source. We could still fund the capital plan as it is and fund the streetlight article out of the balance of free cash that's not allocated to anything.
So what you're saying is at this point, we've got an amount that would just, is free cash now and would just flow into next year as free cash if we don't allocate it, appropriate it between now and November.
Yes, and that's what we've tried to do the last few years, is so that helps our free cash number next year, so we can afford to fund part of a capital plan out of that funding.
What is that amount currently?
232 894.
I think we just stumbled on a solution here.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that makes me feel good. And that was basically our conversation the other day, that it would most likely be paid for by free cash from one of multiple sources where free cash is held.
Although I still want definitive answers around some of those issues you brought up earlier, Dave, on the capital plan, in particular around fire
Yep.
department and that kind of thing.
Yep, I agree.
Okay. All right, then we'll go to BB.
All right, so it's BB and CC. You see how they're strike. So when, I don't know if Adam mentioned this, but those are, the order is going to be reversed so that the, this is one you're looking at right now is the one that just replaces planning board with board of selectmen throughout the bylaw. They're going to flip that order. So it's the more substantial one that comes first, and then,
So this will come after. Okay.
yeah, this will come after.
Okay.
So
That's why it was not clear to me why, when they were crossed out, what the deal was there. Okay.
and we are on
God, these are long articles.
Excavation.
DD is was already removed.
I'm still scrolling here.
Okay.
It's around,
Yeah,
it's
we're not
around
there
page 19 on my document.
Like, boy, that planning board really comes in with really long.
They get paid by the word, apparently. Yeah.
Ask the town clerk's opinion on that. Why can't they just do a one paragraph thing and have a handout?
Okay, so DD's out, EE's out, FF's out.
DG and HH. Those were all previously removed. And so II, the last article is the citizens petition. And they discussed this Tuesday night with the petitioner. So you'll see town council's comment, how it was not properly worded. And consulting with council and the town moderator. Council already came back with, he doesn't think a motion would substantially be in the confines of what it's looking to achieve to do. But I'm waiting for the moderator because that's really ultimately the moderator's call.
So Heather, I'm not sure I understand what you just said. Are you saying that a modified motion bringing the article to the floor would not be appropriate? Initially, that's the thought, and that most likely an amendment, if that's possible, is the better way to accomplish what has not been accomplished in the wording.
Council said that he thinks it would be difficult to structure a motion that would achieve the purpose of the article within the way it's worded.
Within the scope of the wording.
Right.
Okay. But it,
Right,
has
because when it was written, he's withdrawing, right?
no.
Well, we were going to get back to him to see what town council and the moderator came back with. And this
Okay.
could always be put on the fall town meeting with it
Okay.
properly worded. Because it's very specific language that needs to be in the article in order to petition the state.
Right, and we couldn't amend it because the acceptance of articles had ended.
We can't
And
amend
then it,
a citizen's
I'm sorry,
petition.
go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, we can't amend a citizen's petition. It has to
Right.
be worded exactly as how they submit it.
There was quite a bit of discussion at the BOS meeting between the BOS and Mr. Warnick about the frustration of his request for help I don't think it fell on the correct ears to get it to happen. And I made a comment that I felt his pain because 3 years ago when I tried to bring or did bring my citizens petition forward, I was fortunate enough to be very good friends with the former town council. And he helped me formulate the article. So when it was turned in, it was appropriately worded. Very difficult, I agree, to get these worded properly, and you got to have some support from somebody that knows municipal law.
Okay, right now I'm just checking to see if there's anything in the mailbox. I'm getting ready to close the public hearing unless anybody has any questions or comments related to any of the articles that were gone through. And then seeing none, then I will close the public hearing portion of the meeting, and we'll go back through the warrant articles and identify the articles that we're prepared to make recommendations on tonight. And tonight is our only opportunity to make recommendations before the warrant is printed. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So then, I hate to do this to you, Peter, but could you please bring it back up? I could pick on somebody else tonight, just, you know.
We're back.
All right. So on A, see if the town will vote to hear and or accept the regular written reports of the town officers and committees. Does the finance committee feel that we need to make a recommendation?
I move that we
Or is
find
this
no.
one-
I move that we find no financial impact.
I second.
All in favor of this? Oh,
We have to
By the
do a
way, that
roll.
was
So
Dave
fa-
Passios.
We have to do a roll.
no,
Roll.
actually, I
Every
heard
one of
that,
these.
but I was also, we're going to have to do a roll call vote every time.
Okay.
So I will, at this point then, all of a sudden I was, like having flashbacks to the Tuesday night meeting when Tom had us. Here are our yeses and here are, so we're going to hold and discuss it later. So, but this is we'll go ahead and start and we'll see how far we get before we get bogged down. So, all right. So all in favor of the motion as made by Mr. Passios? John?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Jay?
Aye.
And I for myself. B, to see if the town will vote to authorize revolving funds for various department boards, committees, agencies, or officers. This one we typically do make a motion on. So does anyone have a motion to, or,
Yeah, John, I recommend approval.
Second.
okay, so, was that Peter?
John moved, and I have Dave as a second.
Okay, thank you. Then all in favor, John,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Michelle,
Aye.
Jay,
Aye.
and I for myself. C, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money for payment of prior year expenses. And we are making that in, what was the amount again, Heather?
$476.21.
476.21. Okay, so I would accept a motion to recommend approval in the amount of $476.21.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second. I'll second Dave's motion.
Okay, all in favor, John,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Michelle,
Aye.
Jay,
Aye.
and I for myself. Choose D, to see if the town will vote to transfer from available funds all sums of money necessary to amend the amounts voted for the town's FY 2020 budget at this point, there is no action to be taken. Is that correct?
Correct. Do you want to defer it?
Yeah, I would imagine that we would defer. Unless anybody, and if anybody disagrees, like pop in before.
Do we need to vote to defer or not?
No. Well, there's nothing really there to vote on. I mean, we could vote to defer.
I'd rather not.
Yeah,
Zero amount.
I mean,
I'm
I
just
set that
asking.
precedence on the first one, but we
I'm
really,
just asking,
right, we
yeah.
really don't have to do that. All we have to do is agree.
So for the it's printed that way, and it's the explanation is a recommendation will be announced by the board when the article is considered at town meeting. So if there were, we don't expect anything, but if there were changes, it would then go to you for a vote to make a recommendation.
Heather, at this point, it would be a passover
If there's no, yeah, if there's nothing. It would be
if nothing changes. Okay.
E, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money to fund the first year of the FY 20, 21, and 22 police officers collective bargaining agreement.
I have just a quick question on that.
Okay.
Heather, would you be willing to give the analysis as to the annual cost of that contract as you did at some point
Mhm.
after it was agreed to? I just think that's the point of bringing it to town meeting. The town meeting gets a chance to hear the number that salaries increased or whatever, however you want to identify it, due to the contract, and then they vote to approve the contract. I think that's the transparency that Peter and I were looking for.
Yeah, certainly. And I thought I gave that as part of, even though we passed over it at town meeting, I thought I gave that presentation at the town meeting. But
Yeah, I don't honestly remember. I remember us asking, I believe, for a number, and you added it in later in a meeting, in one of our meetings, but, oh, I know why I don't remember. I wasn't there. Whoops.
No, you were at that one. You were at that one.
Oh, no, that was
The
fall
following.
town meeting. That's right. Peter
I
wasn't
wasn't
there.
at that one.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you presented it to us, Heather, but I don't think this was presented at town meeting, or the explanation was given for the reason why it was being passed over. As
Right,
a
but not the numbers.
$0 effect on the current year.
Well,
I don't think it was a full discussion.
yeah, so we're just looking for those numbers to be shared.
Right.
certainly.
Otherwise, I
So
move
do I have-
we, otherwise I make a motion that we vote to approve this article.
John, I will
So I have a
second.
motion to recommend approval.
I've got a-
John, did you second that?
I did second
Okay. Then, all in favor? John,
that. Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Jay,
Aye.
Michelle,
Aye.
and I for myself. All right, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds a sum of money for the FY 2021 capital plan as appearing in the capital planning committee report, or take any action relative thereto.
I'll make this easy. I move that we defer to town meeting. Or I ask that we defer.
I totally agree with Dave. It's unsettled.
Can I ask what's going to settle it? I know that the streetlights is one of them. What else? And then you want to hear back about the paramedic outfitting the ambulance. Is that the other open piece?
John, what's your perspective? I think everybody knows mine.
Well, my perspective is like a deer frozen in the headlights, in that we have no idea what is going to happen with respect to some of the variables, like free cash, say new growth, for instance. And so I don't think there's anything to be lost if we defer until things may be a little clearer at town meeting.
Right, well, we can defer here. We may be deferring more than we typically like to, because if we defer here, then that means that there's other places where we will then necessarily have to defer because we didn't take action on this. So I just want to make that plain before we move on.
I think that's part of the process that we're trying to put in place.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I understand. I just want to make sure that if
Well,
if
Terry,
we're
can I,
deferring, are we deferring because we disagree with the funding of the capital plan as presented?
I feel that by town meeting, we may have additional information that tells us that we need to tighten our belt a little bit more, or we've had enough conversation between ourselves, the town manager, and capital planning that maybe we want to reassess the priorities. There's a number of different reasons to defer.
Michelle?
so Heather, if I could ask, do you think there's going to be a revision to revenue projections between now and town meeting?
No.
So, this particular article is being entirely funded by free cash, though,
Correct.
right? So, if we do not put that free cash someplace, something bad happens. We need to allocate this free cash someplace.
My
Right.
my recommendation, if the whole parts or the whole plan was deferred, to put that free cash into stabilization.
Right. And I'm not saying that I would even recommend putting in the stabilization tonight, but at some point we need to take some action. Probably on town meeting floor is where we're going with this, which is totally fine. I think the only immediate ramification is that there's no recommendation in the warrant, and we need to account for that in the letter that Michelle has drafted.
Which will be
those-
no problem. I mean,
Right,
if
right.
that's absolutely no problem. Revising the letter is the least of the concern. I do want to ask, though, if I could, Terry, back to your point, if we defer on the capital plan, does that mean we have to defer on the whole budget since the capital plan is
No.
part of the budget? No.
No,
Okay.
we don't have to defer on the whole budget because this is taken separately from the budget.
Okay.
But we would then defer on the article to put the amount into the stabilization fund because we would be anticipating
Different.
potentially changing that amount going into the stabilization fund by deferring the capital plan.
But just
So-
deferring it,
I'm sorry?
I beg your pardon, I interjected, Terry, I apologize.
No, that's fine.
Just deferring on the stabilization amount does not make the money vanish. You just have the money in a stabilization account. It is available to us later on if some unanticipated something happens that reduces the projected funding.
No, right, yeah, no, I'm fine with that. I'm just saying that basically when we get to that article, we'll probably want to defer on that as well
Sure.
because one is going to feed into another. The same with the lights and things like that. So it's basically, I'm just looking at the down the road, what else it might end up causing us to defer
Yeah.
to.
And I
So
don't,
is it then the,
I don't
I'm sorry,
think
go
any
ahead,
of us, I don't think any of us think that we're going to go and put the 660 some odd $1,000 of free cash in the stabilization account at town meeting. I think what we're getting at here is we need more time before we're ready to recommend this in its current form.
Exactly.
right, no, but yeah, I understand that. Okay, so then the pleasure of the board is to, what's the language? That we're going to make our recommendation at town meeting.
Deferred.
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so then we're to G. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money to defray the charges and expenses of the town. So this is the town budget. Do I have a motion on the town budget?
Could I make a comment before we
Sure.
move on this? So when the finance committee moved the budget last year, after a lot of discussion at the public hearing, particularly around the school department issues that had been brought forth last year, I left the meeting after the vote on this warrant item recommendation, and then made very public criticisms of this board for not discussing this when the time came to make the recommendation. And I just want to acknowledge that because I don't want to belabor tonight's discussion. I think this budget sucks. I hate it. I think it's miserable. I hate what we're all going through. It's nobody's fault. This is not meeting the needs of the town. And but it's been a pleasure working with you guys on this year. And I think we need to vote for it.
Yeah, no doubt. Like, I go into this with a heavy heart. Just like I put in the letter, that's totally what I meant. It's hard to see these departments that have all these goals sort of have to wait and see if they can move forward with them. And I feel good that we can look at this again for the fall town meeting. But Peter, I totally agree with you. Like, no one wants this. Absolutely no one wants this. But I think it's the best we can do with what we have.
And if I may, I totally agree with that. It is the best we can do at this point. And the light at the end of or light down the tunnel, it's not at the end of the tunnel, but the light down the tunnel is, again, as you just said, we've got the opportunities in November to take a second look at this very strong look at it and have hopefully a little more information and be able to supplement where it's really needed if we possibly can.
But, and I also would, like for my own comment, would like to bring up that I do believe that the $1 million buffer is a reasonable buffer. And I also believe that, and trust in the professionalism of the people who are running the town to defray any expenses that, that maybe are in the budget, but we could find that if we needed to find places to pull from because the situation gets worse instead of better. But there's hope. The golf courses are open today. So I'm taking that as a sign of something hopeful. But I do believe that this is a responsible budget given the situation that we're presented. And I look forward to being able to get back to looking at how to address the goals and priorities of the town in a more better budget in the future. So, with that, do I have a motion?
I move we recommend approval.
I will second that.
Okay, so all in favor, John,
Aye.
Michelle,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Jay,
Jay? I think we lost Jay.
Jay Stark.
Looks frozen.
Well, it will be aye for myself, and we'll come back to Jay on that one. It was the most important vote of the night, Jay. Where'd you go?
Waiting all year for this.
Okay, so H we can ignore, so that's nice, and I we can ignore,
Oh, I'm back
which
on.
will bring us to J, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate. Okay, and I would just suggest that we defer on this one until we know what the amount of money going into stabilization would be.
I agree.
I will second that.
I don't think
We'll just
if
go-
we're following
we'll
our
just go
precedent,
with
we
it.
don't need to vote. Right.
Yeah. No, we're just going with consensus on that unless somebody says,
Right.
no, I want to vote. Okay, K? No K.
No.
No.
Jay's back.
Sewer Enterprise Fund. We heard the presentation from the sewer committee.
Terry, before we move
Yes.
forward, Jay, it looks like Jay's back. I don't know if he's got sound, but do you want to go back and get his vote on the budget?
Okay, let me,
Article.
oh, there he is. Okay. Jay, we just voted to recommend the budget. Are you an aye?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Now we're we're looking for a motion to make a recommendation on the Sewer Enterprise Fund. Do we need the dollar amount on this in the motion?
The L is FY20, which they don't have at this time any amounts.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't read it all the way through. Okay, so this one we're just going to defer on because they don't have anything at this time. So M is to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer a sum of money to operate the sewer enterprise fund for FY 2021. And do we have an amount of money on that one?
Yes. $1,820,203.44.
I'm sorry, 1,820,000
$203.44.
and 44 cents. Okay. Then do I have a motion?
I move we recommend approval.
Second.
All in favor? Jay,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Michelle,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and I for myself. And to see if the town will vote to transfer from available funds $30,000 into the Sewer Capital Reserve Stabilization Fund or take any other action relative thereto. Do I have a motion regarding a recommendation?
I move we approve this.
Okay, so John motions to recommend approval.
Recommend approval.
Second.
Is that Jay? Okay. All in favor? John,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Jay,
Aye.
Michelle,
Aye.
and I for myself. To see if the town will vote to transfer from available funds the sum of $656 into the OPEB Sewer Trust Fund or take any other action relative thereto. All right, now on
What?
this is actually just a procedural question, and actually I don't know why I didn't look at this before, but has it always gone to the OPEB Sewer Trust Fund?
Yes. So their funds are segregated from the general fund, OPEB.
Okay, so that's where the town employee is paid from, is from that.
You're right in the fact that, meaning like on the books they're segregated, but the title of the account is
In
still
one
the
fund.
trust fund, not the sewer trust fund.
Okay.
So that's a good point.
So, will I get, okay, so then is it to the OPEB Trust Fund or the OPEB Sewer Trust Fund?
Well, it would be to the OPEB trust fund, but the sewer funds are segregated on the books.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So do I have a motion?
I move to recommend approval of the transfer of $656 to the OPEB trust fund.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Jay seconded. Okay, all those in favor, Michelle,
Aye.
Jay,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and I for myself. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money, in this case we're talking $302,000, to operate the Solid Waste Disposal Program Enterprise Fund for FY 2021 or take any other action relative thereto. Do I have a motion?
Just a quick question before we make the motion. I don't know why I didn't ask this question or get it verified. This money is actually revenue that's derived from the curbside pickup and the bag sales actually. So all it's doing is appropriating money that we have coming from a revenue stream.
Exactly.
Yep.
That's correct.
Okay. based on that, I move that we recommend approval.
I second the motion.
Okay, all in favor? John,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Jay,
Aye.
Michelle,
Aye.
and I for myself. See if the town will vote to, oh, there he goes.
Where are we on P or where are we?
I don't know.
No.
Sorry.
Is it the
We
We're
did
on
P.
Q.
Yeah, we just did that. We just voted on that.
two?
Getting late.
Okay,
It's 9
so
o'clock. It's past
The
my
Water
bedtime.
Department, the Water Enterprise Fund. Okay, so to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money, in this case $25,000, to the water, to operate the Water Department Water Enterprise Fund. And again, as an enterprise fund, it is a fund that takes money in from fees and discharges the funds for expenses.
I move for
I have any
recommend
motion?
approval.
Okay, Dave made a motion. Do I have a second?
I will second that.
John seconded that. All right, all in favor? Jay?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What funds is it coming from? What revenue source?
The revenue
I
source
don't-
are the people who participate in the town water. So it's mostly going to be the town, isn't it?
Isn't that just Tri-Town for Tri-Town?
It's a very small area of town that's not included in the Lunenburg Water District.
Yeah, isn't that just Tri-Town? They pay to Pittsburgh? There's not a revenue.
No.
I believe that's.
I don't think so. I think that there's a small number of people in Lunenburg who are serviced through Lunenburg, not through the Lunenburg Water District.
Right.
Heather, how do we source that water? Do we
Yeah,
buy
how
it
do we
from
source
the
that water?
water department?
Yeah.
Water district, I mean? I know what you're talking about, and I've never asked this question.
That I'm not sure of how we source it. If it's from the district. Must be.
Well, who does that money get paid out to?
Don't pay those bills and I haven't seen. So.
Okay, that's
This
fine.
came
That's
up.
fair.
This came up in a past town meeting, and I believe it. This is largely like us paying our own water bill. Is basically what this comes down to, right? It's us paying the Lunenburg water, our water bill to the Lunenburg Water District, our sewer bill to the Lunenburg Sewer Department, et cetera, right? I mean, that's basically what's happening here.
No, I think it has more to do with entities using water down in the Baker Station area off of Summer Street.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's on.
All right.
Isn't that Tri-Town Apartments?
Well,
I think it is
Station.
primarily, but
I
I'm
thought
not
they
sure
made-
it's totally.
It's definitely that area of town. That's where these water accounts are. But I can find out the answers to those questions if you.
Be good information. to
Yeah,
have
because I
for the
wasn't
future.
aware that,
Go ahead, Jay. I'm sorry.
I thought the 25,000 had to do something with if there's repairs need to be made to the water system. I didn't think there was a revenue source for it.
no,
Yeah,
so as an enterprise, as an enterprise fund, there's money that comes in. So there's a revenue source, and then it's expended.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to operate as an enterprise fund.
Well, it didn't.
We should probably defer and learn what we're doing here.
Do we still have Karen on? I don't see the whole.
No, that has.
Oh, okay.
No, I was looking for her. No, she fell off.
Okay.
We've
Done it every year for many
I know,
years.
I know,
and
yeah.
we just have never asked that question.
Yeah.
Well, we can defer it if you'd like. If you want to wait for another explanation. I know that I've heard the explanation, but I've sat through this an long time, and it was a reasonable explanation at the time.
There it is.
I can't remember what it was, but that was probably like 7-8 years ago that I asked,
I think
yeah,
I
just-
could move to. I think I could move to approve. It's just if we could get clarification on that, because
Right.
I think we all agree that it has been discussed before, and we all, more or less town meeting always agrees with it, even when it is questioned. It's just we don't remember what the answer was. So I move we
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm
vote
okay.
to approve.
John, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I was thinking that at least by deferring, it would at least create a situation where we'd actually find out what it is, what the mechanism is all about, rather than
Right.
just moving it. So I really think that it would be useful for me to at least understand more about what's happening.
Sure.
Is there any
I
urgency?
withdraw my motion.
Okay. And we will defer on Q. And then we will go to R to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds the sum of $191,000 to operate the Public Education Government Access Enterprise Fund. Do I have a motion?
I will move to recommend approval.
Do I have
Second.
a second?
Second.
All in favor? John,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Jay,
Aye.
Michelle,
Aye.
and I for myself. No S. T. To see if the town will vote to amend Chapter 70 of the town's general bylaws entitled Salary Administration Plan. And it was for the addition of different job titles to the administration plan, but it was not, and I know the question had come up whether it was related to filling in positions, but that's not the case. This is just putting positions on the salary administration schedule. So do I have any motions, recommendations, or comments?
I'd like to comment that it seems to me that there's no direct financial effect.
Oh,
Well, there
I
we
don't
go.
know. I think
I
that's
believe it
worth
did.
asking because they were contract
safety instructor.
positions.
Really?
Yes. I saw this at the select board and Heather, I'm sure has more details about it, but I think that's what happened. These people that are being, the positions here are currently or were contract positions and now they're becoming.
Ah, okay. I missed that at the, when I went to the meeting.
Everything but the water safety instructor.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
So the videographer and the senior videographer, they're existing positions that were paid as contractors are now incorporated into the salary administration plan because they should be paid as employees and not contractors. And so those are already existing positions.
Okay.
And the water safety instructor was a new one that's not getting
Hmm.
filled.
I stand corrected. Thank you.
I seem to recall the PAC explained to us that this is all being funded. The two videographer positions are being funded out of their revolving fund or enterprise account. or whatever.
Enterprise. Mhm.
It's not a 1-for-1. There are some carrying costs associated with carrying an employee, but it's really nominal, right? I mean, it's like $1 an hour in either direction or something, right?
Right, the indirect costs, which
Yeah.
they also cover those costs.
They cover it, right? But there is a different outlay in terms of what they're actually spending per hour.
So it's a very small percentage of whatever the salary is.
Right.
And Heather, if I'm not mistaken, the water safety instructor, that was just covering a requirement that Parks is a position that Parks is supposed to have on the town beach at all times, and it wasn't designated that way previously.
Yes.
Yep.
But the Parks Commission, I met last week, and they're not opening the beach as of now. So this position wouldn't even be filled until a future date.
Right, they're not planning on hiring anybody until they have an open date, if they get an open date.
Right.
Yep. If we need a motion, I move that we move to approve. Recommend to approve, excuse me.
I will
Do I
second.
have a second?
I'll make the second.
Okay, John made the second. So, all in favor, John,
Aye.
Michelle,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Jay,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
and I for myself. You, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to solicit and secure estimates. I'm gonna guess that we're probably gonna want to defer.
Does this even
Yeah.
have any financial effect? I mean,
None.
right, the way I read this is just giving them permission to get estimates.
Plus price quotes.
Well, I think it's all, I mean, the other piece that I'm looking at is that it's also, all right, so basically they're just trying to take another poll because they're not planning to do the demolition, and it's not something that we're required to provide them permission to go out and do that. So, and if they're potentially going to take action Tuesday to withdraw it or leave it in, then my feeling at this point we could say no financial impact, which if that's the way that we'd like to go, we can certainly do that. Or we can just defer because we may not have to take any action at all.
Procedural,
Either
But
or.
I'll entertain a motion anyway.
procedural question before we vote.
Sure.
Heather, can the Board of Selectmen change that article wording at this point, or is it set in stone that it's either that or nothing?
They can change it on Tuesday. That would be their last opportunity.
Right. So based on that, this is not a firm article. I move we defer, excuse me, or ask that we defer.
Prefer we defer.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay, we shall defer. To see if the town will vote to file a home rule petition with the general court for a special law authorizing the investment of library trust funds. We heard the presentation a while ago.
Yeah, I move we recommend to approve.
I have a second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor to recommend approval? John,
Aye.
Michelle,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Jay,
Aye.
and I for myself. W, see if the town will vote to hear an interim report from the TCP Building Design Committee. Do we have a feeling about this at all?
I think we should find that there's no financial effect. This is just going to be a very basic report because not an awful lot is going to be accomplished before town meeting.
Is there anyone who disagrees?
No, I agree.
Okay, so then I'll take a motion to find no financial effect.
So moved. Oh, I'll second.
Give it to Peter. Either way.
I'll second. You can move.
No, Peter, yeah, okay. John,
Aye.
Michelle,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Jay,
Aye.
and I for myself. See if the town will vote to amend the town bylaws entitled Animals. Do I have a motion in any particular way on this one? We heard from Chief Marino.
You know, I wonder if this one's no financial effect. The next one, you know what? Nope, I take that back because someone brought up the whole point of litigation and that's definitely financial effect.
Well, there was also some discussion about, all right, so Karen did mention that the town took in $6,755 in dog fines in 19 and so far in 20, $11,015. So
Right.
this isn't necessarily a nothing. But basically
Yeah, but this isn't
it sounds like
addressing,
some of the fines
This isn't-
had actually been lagging over time.
but this isn't
So
really
they weren't
addressing
all-
the majority of those fines. Those fines are mostly like you didn't register your dog. This is
Right.
this is primarily oriented on kenneling, which I'm willing to bet we didn't ask the question specifically of the chief, but I'd be willing to bet that our fines around kenneling are probably hovering around zero.
Okay. Well, do we feel that there's no financial impact at this point on this bylaw? Or does anybody want to make a motion to recommend approval on the chance that there is?
I think it's a pretty skinny impact, but there's an impact nonetheless. This is back to our, is $100 financial impact. I tend to lean toward it is, but there were other opinions when we did this last time. So
There's no impact to the budget.
right,
But it's town revenue.
right.
But I go back to that whole point of litigation. If putting
Well,
this
that's
bylaw
correct.
in place allows us to avoid litigation, that is potential financial impact that I think is significant.
It's indirect.
I move we recommend
No
approval.
budget number.
Yeah.
Second,
Did we lose Terry?
What was the motion?
She
I
has
moved-
something up to her ear.
I moved that we had recommended approval. I think she lost audio. So, or she's having a phone conversation with somebody else.
She's pointing at herself and
Calling the chief.
She's calling the chief.
Chief, are you awake?
Sorry, John fell off and he's going to try to get back on. And he didn't realize I was using my phone as my microphone and
Okay.
speakers. So he's going to try to get back in. So what
It's
did I
okay,
miss?
Terry. We had fun watching you.
Yeah. I moved that we recommend approval, and I think Dave seconded.
Yeah, I think it was me. You're right.
Okay, so all in favor, Michelle,
I,
Peter,
Aye.
Jay,
No, I'm abstaining.
you're abstaining?
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't think there's.
and I for myself? Okay, okay. All right, then with that, the next article actually, I think, sets the fees?
Yep.
Okay. And then on this one, do we want to make a recommendation here, or are we going to identify no financial impact because it doesn't change the fees that much?
that's what I was getting at with my question from the chief is if this represents a significant change from what already exists, and the answer he gave leads me to think that no, there is no significant financial impact with regards to this article.
Okay. So does anybody want to make a motion either way? Anyway. Well, I'm left with
No
defer.
financial impact.
Okay. Oh, that's right. We're doing consensus on no financial impact too. I'm sorry, I forgot.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well-
So no financial impact.
I think we need to take a vote on
Okay.
finding no financial impact.
Okay, so Jay made, we'll take Jay's statement as a motion to recommend no financial impact. Do I have a second?
Second,
All right, so then we'll do the roll call. Michelle,
I,
Dave,
aye.
Peter,
No.
Jay.
Aye.
Aye for myself. Unless all of a sudden people want to come in with kennels.
My vote,
Kennel
my
on
vote
every
was
corner.
really for consistency based on a discussion we had last fall. I knew where this was going, but I want to be consistent.
Well, you had me thinking, so that's good. Okay, so Z, the Community Preservation Fund. Does anybody have a feeling about this one? Do you feel like you need more information, and do we want to defer?
I listened to the discussion earlier today, and I understand that there are some questions out there in terms of the mechanics of this, and there probably will be questions about the mechanics to some degree, and when and if it's approved after the fact. Maybe some things will get shaken out between now and town meeting. I know there are questions about where do the funds ultimately go? Do we need to have a prescribed list in advance of this or not? As well as, what's the story with the matching funds, and what can we truly expect when it comes to matching funds? With respect to the last question, I would vote for this if there were $0 in matching funds, because I think we have got to create a piggy bank here to have funds available to do the kinds of projects that this thing addresses. And as they come along and we don't have a financial plan to address them, we're constantly drawing from operating funds to fund these types of projects, or we're not doing them at all and we're kicking the can down the road. And so I just think that this is financially responsible. And, is it a tax increase? Yes, it is. But it's pretty nominal. There's plenty of circuit breakers, and I think that this is a responsible thing to do. But I know that I'm probably in the minority today on this.
Yeah.
So is that a motion and approval?
Go ahead.
Well, I would move to approve. Yes, for purposes of discussion and moving the discussion.
And would I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Jay made a second. Michelle, you had a comment?
No, I'm fine to vote.
Fine to vote? Okay, then,
Did we lose John?
Yeah, I was on the phone with him.
Oh,
He
okay.
Get back. He just
Okay, I
didn't realize that I needed. He thought he was going to hang on my phone, but I had to tell him that I'm using my phone for my microphone and
Got it.
speakers, and that's why I lost you while I was gone. But all right. So
I think it's really important that we get a full
Yeah.
board
we'll have
board
John
vote
back.
on this.
We'll probably have John back. I'm hoping by the end of the night.
But I want
I
to make
would
sure
wanna-
his vote gets counted on this article.
Do we want to do what we did before when we lost Jay and vote, and then come back? And,
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean-
we should vote and then come back. That's fine. Michelle,
No.
Dave,
No,
Peter,
Yes.
Jay.
We lost
Aye.
Jay. Jay's a yes. All right. Jay sounds
Jay's a
like
yes?
Yeah. Jay, were you a yes? You should confirm that.
I think he's frozen.
He is. We lost Jay.
And I am
Oh, we
clueless.
got John. That's
Oh.
good.
John's back.
The space opened
John,
up.
all right, we're taking action on whether or not we're going to recommend approval for the CPA article.
So
And
far, we think we have 2 no's and 1 yes. We think.
For the CPA,
Yes.
Yes.
I did not get the benefit of your debate But when we left the discussion last time, I was inclining toward yes, so I would be a yes.
Jay?
Unless you can,
Aye.
Okay, and I for myself. So on this one, the Finance Committee votes to recommend approval with a vote of 4-2.
may I say though, it's a sloppy process because at least I'm persuadable either way. So if you want, if we want to go back, I don't know, it's late at night. If you want to take the time to go back and persuade me.
I'd concede that it's sloppy. There's no doubt about it.
Well, it's
Suboptimal.
definitely, I mean,
Yeah.
procedurally, it's not, I mean, it doesn't do much for me. But I also think that I agree with Peter that there's a lot of projects that are waiting to be funded that just tax the operating budget more because we're not prepared for them when they come up. And it's not that we're going to have a shortage of those types of things coming down the road. To my mind. So, and again, as Peter also expressed, that there's enough circuit breakers in there for people who may not be able to afford the additional increase.
Yes.
And given that, then I'm comfortable with my vote of yes to at least support the notion of the CPA, whether it goes forward, whether there's discussion that, like makes it. And from a financial position, it's a responsible activity for the town to do, to fund those things that, and to also take an opportunity to have some of those funds matched by the state, so that we're not funding 100% of all the projects. So
Okay.
that was
I'm in
my
good
take on it.
company.
The no, if somebody wants to speak to the no, to talk John out of his vote, then we could do that as well.
Late.
Or we,
Well, to be honest with you, one of the factors that I consider is the amount that's going to go into debt, the amount of debt we're going to be taking on, and other expenses of that nature. So to me, this sort of adds on top of that. And it's a valid point that we miss out on matching funds. That's completely valid. What I don't have additional insight into is what the town feels they need for all these special projects. I don't know. I agree there's projects out there that are timely and can't wait for town meeting, but I don't know how the town feels about that. So
Yeah.
I'll stick by my vote for how I feel about the way it's put together, the lack of concreteness, the outstanding questions, and my concern about people being able to take advantage of the circuit breakers, and let the town vote on how they see it as a priority, how they feel about these projects that it would fund, whether they feel it's a priority for them.
sure. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And as for example, I think I will go back to, we ended up taking up debt to purchase the Saliba Brothers property. That this would have been something that could have been used to do that. So if we had that pool of money sitting around waiting to be used, but obviously we didn't. So it's still it's more money, but it's also money that could have been used to fund one of the other projects. If we didn't have a myriad of projects that are presented on a regular basis, then maybe I wouldn't feel like yes. But it's I don't think that we have a month go by that we don't hear of some project coming down the road. So that's that's basically my take on it. But.
Well, may I
And again,
interject?
the town will have the pleasure of voting at town meeting and then at the ballot. So,
Yeah.
um,
I appreciate your,
Okay.
I appreciate the perspective, Michelle, but I'm still a yes.
No problem.
okay. AA, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds. I think this one for the town streetlights, we're going to have to defer because there's insufficient information.
Mhm.
I agree.
But we also will want to be discussing, and I don't know if there's a way to say that, yeah, we support the notion and but we can't because the article, the way that it's written, I'm not sure that we could recommend approval.
That's why we would defer and decide on town meeting floor once it's moved.
Yeah, no, I know. I think basically it was just, like it would be interesting if, like there was a place where, like next to finance committee recommendation, we could put leaning yes.
Well, I think, honestly, I think
How
we're
about a
going to need to
mojo?
put a flag on this and really request the help of the town manager and the board of selectmen on this. This needs to get ironed out, ideally, before we get to the capital plan article, because these are interrelated. And if we don't have a pretty good consensus in terms of how this is going to shake out, understanding the fact that there's excess free cash out there and we could potentially fund it that way. But in my mind, these are all connected, and we really need to know prior to going into town meeting what the game plan is here.
So if we're sitting on free cash funds, is this something that if we took action on at the May town meet or at the June town meeting now, if we took action on this, is this something that could be pursued prior to the July 1? It wouldn't matter. There's only 2 weeks between this and the July 1 date. So never mind. I'm thinking we're doing this the first weekend in May.
Terry, were you leaning towards, could we potentially prepay it in 20?
Right.
Oh, okay.
Heather, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, no.
Yeah, I don't. You mean as far as I don't think we'll be able to
The
do
free cash, that you said is available is actually though in 21, right? It's not, or is it carryover from 20?
it's only available until June 30th, and then it closes out, and that's when it would fall back into next year's balance.
So it's free cash now and free cash next year if it's not appropriated.
No, we would have to appropriate it now.
Yeah, you have to appropriate by June 30th. And if not, it falls towards the balance of this year's, when we close out our books. So at the end of that, it would fall towards next year's certified free cash.
So is it, all right, so at this point, you're thinking that the 236,000 will either go into free cash to be available for the following year's capital plan, or we use it now to do the streetlights. Those are like the two ways this could go.
Yeah, it wasn't part of my original recommendation.
Wasn't part of your plan, but yeah.
It was. It's an available source to fund the streetlights. Versus make a very, I don't know, messy, I think, to reduce or change or amend however the capital plan is. You could accomplish both.
Without disrupting the capital plan. I
Right.
see what you're saying. Yeah, I agree. I'm still not quite, I still don't quite have my head wrapped around as to what fiscal year this money is presently sitting in, but it would be usable to cover this article.
This year, because it was certified in the fall of 2019, so therefore has to be used by June 30th of 2020. If it's not, it falls towards it closes out and goes towards the balance of what we could certify in the fall of 2020 towards the closeout of fiscal 20 funds.
It's unappropriated free cash.
Right.
Okay. Unappropriated in 2020 at the moment, and
Right.
would roll to 21 if we don't appropriate it.
Right.
Okay, great, thank you. Please consider recommending that next Tuesday. Thank you.
She'll consider everything. She always considers everything.
I mean, what we'd effectively be doing is preempting next year's capital plan process by doing this. But, you know, I mean, given the circumstances we're in and given that this thing has a 19-month crossover, you know, like
Yeah.
it's a where you would normally think that wouldn't be the most fiscally responsible thing to do, given the circumstances. I think this kind of qualifies as pretty well reasoned to do something like this.
Right. Well, it also frees them up to be able to make a move to get the grants necessary to do the switch over to the
Right.
LED as well. So it's even more savings
Mhm.
than what are stated just from purchasing. So that would be nice too. So anyway, so we will defer on this. And then we will talk about excavations and earth removal. And I believe that the last time these came up, and I would say this is true for both articles, that I'm not sure that there's a financial impact to the town.
I agree.
I agree also.
I agree also.
Peter wonders. Michelle
Yeah, and
wonders.
it's
No,
just
I
for
agree, there's no
consistency.
financial impact.
I mean, for me, it's a consistency thing, right? If there's fines involved here, which there are, then it's not a direct budget impact, but there's a cash flow, there's a financial impact.
But are the fines new to this article, or are they just being plugged in there from what exists to be able to write the article?
I
Right?
believe that the change is just the amount of dirt
Yeah.
that can be dug. I
Um,
believe the fines have always been there, but the Board of Selectmen have not.
My recollection, and it could be very faulty, was that when this came up last fall, the fine schedule was new, and it failed, and therefore we're back to wherever we were before. I can't remember what the delta was. Again, we had an argument about the financial impact of new fines last fall, so I'm assuming that they're the same. But I didn't think to ask Adam.
No, the bylaw with where it's just changing the selectmen to planning board.
Oh, I'm sorry. That one has no fine.
That one, and there's no, that fine violation penalty section, that's not new, that's the existing bylaw. But the new article, meaning the more substantive one, which was CC, now BB, that's all different.
Did that reflect an increase in fines?
Yes, because if you look at, it's under section 140-12, enforcement and violations and penalties.
If you guys recall last year, we had a discussion about the increase in fines, and even the new fines are pretty nominal. And the question that I had asked of Adam was, why are they so low? And his answer was because it was limited by statute.
Yes.
But the previous fines were not even to that level.
Right. So the fines under the
I don't know what section they're in. I'm just kind of scrolling.
I don't have a page.
Oh, there you are. Well, no, that's permit fees.
Here it is.
so-
They're right there. Yeah.
Violation penalties, yep.
All right, so currently they're 50, 100, and 200,
Yes,
No,
that's the current.
and then they're going to what?
100, 200, 300.
And I apologize.
Nope.
Nope, that's a,
Doesn't this go back to the amount of earth being removed? Like that changes as well? What
Yes.
exists now is
Right.
virtually unenforceable, and now it's going to change what's finable. Am I making sense? It is kind of late.
No, you're right. You're right, though. It is. I mean, because we're going from, I can't remember the exact numbers, but I mean, we're like a 10x, more than that.
Exactly. A two axle to whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So even that changes it.
Right. So you're right. I mean, it's less,
There's no
the fines,
financial impact on the budget.
the fines are less likely.
Right. But when they happen, they're more.
Yeah. All right. You got me. I'm persuaded. You got me.
Sorry.
Okay.
So it's, my version is, has an old number in it. So it's on page 17.
I don't have page numbers here. I don't
All
think.
right. Looks like 50, 100,
10.
50, 100.
Right.
100.
All right. I'm persuaded. You changed my mind.
About what?
I move
Nope.
we find no financial impact.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
no financial impact.
Okay. We took a vote for that, right?
Final.
So
Yep.
do we have, who made the motion? Jay?
Dave and Jay, I think, seconded or vice versa.
Okay. So, Michelle,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Jay,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and I for myself. Okay, so do we have more?
It's the citizen
Yeah.
petition one. That's it.
Alcohol.
Oh, okay. That one I would think we would need to defer to see if it comes back with,
Yeah.
Yeah, we might as well
Um,
defer because that may get removed on Tuesday anyway.
Sure.
Oh, Heather, that has to stay there, doesn't it?
Yes, it does have.
Right.
Can the
Yeah.
can the petitioner withdraw it?
They could. Yes, we'd probably just want something in writing from the petitioner if they
Right.
withdraw it.
Okay.
yeah, if they withdraw it. Otherwise, they'll probably just either make an amendment at the town meeting or that it would be passed over, so.
Right.
Okay.
We made it.
Oh, we're not done yet. Wait a minute. Where's I gotta go find the agenda.
My auto thermostat turned the house temperature down 10 degrees about an hour ago. It started to get chilly in here.
I've got the agenda. You want me to open the agenda back up, Terry? Are you all right?
Yeah, that would be good, thanks.
All right. I've had my screen open all night. I might as well just leave it there.
Yeah, it's like I keep closing things and I keep not meaning to. All right, so basically, on the warrant letter, Michelle, are you getting the feedback that you're needing?
Well, I guess it depends on who you ask. I have gotten feedback. I gave Peter a last draft we were going back and forth on the school bullet point. And I haven't heard back yet on that. I got some feedback from John Henshaw that I folded in. And I know Jay was looking at it and Dave, you had mentioned it, but that's as much as I've gotten. So
Yeah, I'm walking away because I need to go get my copy that I marked up. I had
Right.
something, but I don't think it's critical.
I was hoping to not get that deep into it tonight, but Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Michelle had proposed some new language on the school department bullet, and I think we came to a place that's fine with me. My only request would be that Heather verify the numbers.
oh, yeah, no, she's going to verify all of them. Yes. Right. Because, well, no, let me explain a little bit. First of all, we need to be on the same page. But secondly, the numbers that I came up with, like the one for the Monty Tech assessment, that was a calculation I did based on what they allocated last year for a percentage, what they did this year for a percentage, taking the difference, doing the calculation to come up with the additional that it is.
Right.
Right. Like the number didn't present itself someplace. I calculated it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And,
so-
I recognize that. And it's not, I understand what you did, and I'm relatively fine with the percentage and the dollars. But I do think it needs to be verified by Heather and probably Karen.
Yeah.
I just so everybody kind of gets the background, and I'll be happy to make the email chain public. The issue that I have is I think that there's a point to be made here around the Student Opportunity Act and the negative consequences that it's had upon us,
Hmm.
and the potential negative consequences that could be magnified if Chapter 70 continues to be underfunded. And if you recall, the issue that Senator Tran had brought up was we changed the formulas without a funding source. The governor underfunded Chapter 70, therefore you get less as an unintended consequence. And in my view, this is something that's going to reverberate for some time if either the formulas aren't changed to something more tenable for Lunenburg or Chapter 70 is funded to the degree that the SOA intended. Now, is it the role of the Finance Committee and this letter to incorporate all that? I think Michelle's position is probably not. And I understand and respect that position. If it is not, I intend to state my case publicly in writing through other means.
Well, and I think that I hope that I included what you wanted included in there, because I wasn't trying to edit you. I didn't want the whole Finance Committee letter to be about the school budget, but I felt like I did a fair representation by putting all that information into that bullet point, which is actually at the top of the list of things to look at, as well as positioning them at the top of the list of the departments that had to cut their recommended budget or their target budget. So I think in those two places, I wanted to, even before we sat down and looked at it, I wanted to illustrate, that the school department is a big budget and it's something that we have to take seriously. We're constrained by the tax levy. And if people want a bigger school budget, they're going to have to look outside of the tax levy to get that. Those were the messages I was trying to send in the letter. And now the letter includes, concrete dollars for people to look at to really illustrate the big picture of the significance of the school budget and the way that state funding impacts the school budget.
Well, there might be. I think that's a good point, but I also think, and I don't know if you are interested in doing this or even can do this, is to and I'm not sure how difficult it would be to do this, would be to try to look at a trend in terms of whether we're having reduced state input into the school budget as a percentage, because it might be minuscule, but as the school budget grows, if it's falling more to the town side than the state side because of reduced funding.
Yeah.
Even though it's not reduced funding, it's a decrease in the increase.
And that's in there. I did that analysis. I went and found the source documents for the budget figures on the state Department of Education website. They're actual spreadsheets. And I did. So I looked at what they had in 19 to 20 and what they have for 20 to 21. And I did a comparison between those two. And there's language in the letter that speaks to that.
Right. Yeah. No, I think I was actually going back further. I was thinking like a 5-year trend.
I can certainly look. Yeah, I'll certainly look. I can do that.
That may also get to the discussion around the SOA and the fact that here we were, like for a couple of years, really advocating for this type of a change, and that wasn't it. It's like, we got kind of caught in the crosshairs there. And I think the other thing is that as one of the interesting things about the Monty Tech increase is its increased opportunities for Lunenburg residents that more kids are able to go, but they've really been increasing their enrollments and their capacity. And so I think we may continue to see bigger increases in the Monty Tech budget than we've seen. But it's just interesting to me that the enrollment numbers totally are going up. So they're increasing their capacity to serve students.
Yeah, and we have no recourse on that. So they increase their capacity. Right. They open beyond our quota, and we have no recourse.
Right. Not to say that, okay, so yeah, and it's certainly a benefit for the students in Lunenburg who are participating in that, but on the other hand, it reduces the capacity of the town to address other issues, so.
And the other thing that we learned
But-
in that was the unintended consequences of school choice as well, right? Which is the school choice payments don't go directly from Lunenburg to Leominster or Neshoba. They're routed through Monty Tech at the Monty Tech rate from Lunenburg.
Right.
So, it's a substantial hit.
Right,
And part of me thinks that this year looked particularly good because of that debt that they paid off. So I'll be curious to see what next year looks like without that positive budget item.
Right.
And their amount, I don't have the number with me, their budget increased at a greater rate this year over last year by over a percentage point. And they did not draw that out during their presentation.
No, they didn't.
right.
That's interesting.
But that's also how they built the capacity to increase the number of students that they have enrolled. So, but anyway, so that's that. Well, are people otherwise comfortable with the tenor of the letter? I guess that's more the point. I think the specifics we can, if you're comfortable doing individual feedback, we don't have to get together Sunday morning. If you would rather get together Sunday morning, I'm happy to do that. The assistant town clerk was kind enough to give me her number so I can call and cancel that meeting if I have to tomorrow.
Well, I guess,
since
I know,
I'm-
Dave, you've got feedback. I guess for me personally, I don't want to get together Sunday, but, the letter has a certain tenor to it, like Terry said, and, you guys all have to want to make that message, support that message, because your name's going to be on it like everybody else's, so.
My question would be procedurally, if Heather's got to check the math and look at the numbers, we probably got some more conversation to have tonight. It sounds like Dave might have some questions or edits. Is it expected that we're going to vote to approve this before it goes to the?
Procedurally,
the
we've
warrant.
never voted to approve the letter.
Okay. All right.
It's
And-
typically been consensus.
Okay.
And it's due the 14th. So my vision for this was to get all the feedback and email out a final draft, what I consider a final draft this weekend.
Good.
And Heather, you would be included on that final draft. I mean, particularly for the numbers, because I suspect you're going to have questions for me on the numbers just because I had to calculate them. So that was my goal, to have a final draft out by this weekend so we can get everything buttoned up and have the letter available for the 14th to submit.
Anything
Just-
else on?
Yeah, just to let you know, my two areas that I had notes on, and I did not bring that copy with me back from work, but I printed out the revision that Michelle sent later today. The area that I had highlighted was the Student Opportunity Act section, and Peter, I think, is going to. Actually, it looks like there's been some changes already made to that. I don't have the two to compare. I just wanted to make sure that we made the point that, one, the formula really shot us in the foot, because the first draft didn't seem to give that a strong impression that, yes, it did, that the Student Opportunity Act did not benefit the town of Lunenburg very much, but I had the impression that it didn't say strong enough that the reformulation really hurt us or had a very negative impact, and that's in here now. So
Yeah.
I'm okay with that section. And I'd had something about the sentence down in about the study group. But I think,
The debt group?
yeah, but I think I'm okay with that, reading it through a couple more times just now.
Okay. And the other thing I removed was the reference to OPEB. That was one of the reasons that we accepted the budget, was because it deposited into OPEB. That clearly doesn't count anymore. So I took that out.
Right,
And
and is there, the only other thing I'm not sure about without reading it all the way through again is that where we've deferred the capital plan to town meeting, and we've got some questions between that and the other issues that we talked about surrounding that. There isn't anything in here that we've fully supported that, is there, or?
no, the only thing I drew out about the capital plan was the reduction in the capital plan. It's a bullet point at the top. There's 5. I added the DPW too, just 5 significant changes to the budget, and the capital plan was one of them.
Okay.
But as we were talking tonight, I thought, well, maybe the fact that we're deferring the capital plan, we should put a comment in the letter about that, we have a substantive approval, I don't want to use that word, of the capital plan, but there were some details we felt needed to be brought to town meeting before we could before we could make a final recommendation on the capital plan.
Yeah,
So I don't know how, the best way to phrase that would be.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
At this
I
late
guess the
hour, I
question-
couldn't come up with it, but I agree with what you're shooting for.
Well, let me ask you this. If there was no article on the streetlights in there, would we be supporting the capital plan as written?
I think personally, I still would be wanting to, I don't know how to answer that question, to tell you the truth. I think there's still some items in the capital plan that could be deferred to November. Putting aside the streetlight article, I guess that's my stance on it, is that I could see more deferrals than we've already done.
Right, but the reason why you would defer would be to have that money on hand in case we didn't have money come in.
At this point, no. My thought process is that now that we have identified a funding source that doesn't affect capital, I go back to my original statement about the capital plan and, our charge to review and recommend that if we're looking to be
So basically, I guess that's what I'm trying to get at, is whether you felt comfortable recommending the capital plan as presented, regardless of any other article. So you didn't. So that's what I wanted to know. I think
I'm with Dave on this as well. I feel as if, you could take a few different things on there, the AC system, the abatement stuff, there are things on there that you could move to stabilization and give yourself some wiggle room in the event that things got worse than they are. Or worse than the worst case scenario that we perceive at this point.
Right.
I recognize the fact that there's a difference of opinion here. Heather thinks we're being conservative enough at this point, as she's articulated. I feel as if I'd prefer to defer and have more information from the state came out today with revenue numbers from the month of April that are crazy. And we have no idea what the legislature is going to do because they haven't met. And we don't know what the federal government is going to do for state and local disasters, funding. So the closer we get to town meeting, the more insight we'll have. And I think that this is one area, it's comparatively small piece of the overall financial picture. And I think we're better to defer it. And it's irrespective of the streetlights. Although
okay.
Today
So
I want the streetlights for other reasons, but
Right. Well, I guess where I'm going with this is that I would then, with Michelle, say that maybe shaping a discussion around the capital plan, and we're deferring until we have more information about what things look like, and handle it separate from the streetlights, or any later discussion during the town meeting, because there's enough of a question on whether or not we want to get a better sense of if there's anything else that we'll feel more confident about by the time we get to town meeting, or we may decide that we don't want to spend any money on anything, and the town might decide that they want to defer or to put that money in stabilization, and we can let them do that. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of different reasons for deferring on that particular item, and I would probably slant the discussion in the letter that way.
Yep, that sounds good.
So that
I
would be my
agree.
take on it.
Yep, I agree.
Okay, so now we're at the next meeting. I will cancel the Sunday meeting so you guys can all sleep in or be nice to, moms everywhere.
Can we go back to minutes, Terry, and do the votes
Oh,
on those
yes,
2 minutes?
thank you. Thank you. I forgot to go back to minutes. Hopefully people have taken the opportunity when not studying the warrant articles to take a look at the,
That was an interesting screen share.
Yeah.
was
What did
that you, Peter?
Oh, you want to see? No, this is a guy. Since it's late at night, nobody's watching. This is an ad
just wanna
campaign
say-
This was an ad campaign that I helped build. So
Well, actually, the only reason I wanted to know if that was you was because if we were getting Zoom bombed, I was going to have to turn everything off.
no, but he's affectionately referred to. Did you? Oh, it's not sharing anymore. Oh, I'm
No,
sorry.
it popped up very quickly and popped away.
Oh, just for your benefit. So
I'm going
this
to
is
take your sharing away in a minute.
this is an ad campaign that I helped build for work, and this guy's affectionately known as Wayne, who used to live across the street from me in Hickory Hills, and he looked just like him. So,
Oh, okay.
so in any event.
So anyway, so we're going back to minutes.
Isn't Bigfoot's name Wayne or something like that in the ad that's running?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now I can't stop sharing though, so I apologize. I don't know what to do here. I've lost
Okay,
control.
minutes from February.
Yeah, minutes.
So do I have a motion on the minutes that were submitted by Peter for the 2 meetings in February? I got nothing.
Well, I can make a motion to accept this, John. I can make a motion to accept the first of the 2 meeting minutes, the earlier February minutes. I have not read the second one. I thought it was a great job on the first one.
I have a second on the first.
Second.
All in favor on acceptance of the minutes of February 15th? Is that what that was?
No, it was February 13th, and then the other one was
13th, okay. So all in favor of, did I get a second? Yes,
Yes.
Dave seconded. Okay, so all in favor, Michelle,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Jay,
Aye.
and I for myself. Do I have a motion on the minutes of, which were was it February 20th,
27th.
27th.
27th?
So moved.
Dave,
Second.
Jay seconded. Okay, all in favor, Michelle,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
John.
Apologies, I haven't read them.
You haven't read them. Jay,
Aye.
and I for myself. You wouldn't vote yes just on my recommendation? You're a wise man. Okay, I did say that we would have a public comment section at the end of the meeting, at the beginning of the meeting. So, do I have any public comment from anybody on the committee?
Oh,
No.
yeah, actually I do. I'm sorry, I didn't get to wake up enough to get my hand up. I just wanted to make a quick comment about the TC Passios committee and what we decided to do at our Monday night meeting. The architect came to us with a proposal for some a la carte items out of the overall project. And we approved moving forward with those parts of the project, and they involve a number of things that need to be done, but do not include entering the building at all at this point. So it's a chance to get an earlier start than waiting until everything opens back up to get started on the engineering and some of the stuff that will have to be done that can be done at this point. And I think, Heather, are we still looking into the possibility of getting them into the building even under the present situation, or has that already been settled?
I reached out to, they need to get in just to do a brief walk around to see the systems. And we're coordinating that with the superintendent.
Okay, great. So in any case, we have started the process for the design, be it later than we had planned, but we are moving forward.
Okay. Any other public comment from anybody on the committee?
I just want to say, I mentioned this earlier. This is the end of the budget season, really, for us until town meeting. But we've done our work here for the most part. With the exception of a few things we need to tidy up. And it's been about a year since Dave and I were appointed, right after town meeting last year.
Yep.
And it's been a pleasure working with you guys this year. And I've learned a lot more than I thought I would learn over the course of the last year. And I thank each of you for your contributions to that.
Well,
It's been a pleasure having you.
yeah, it really has.
Yes, thank you.
I mean, it's
Thank
you
you.
guys, I mean, you guys changed the face of the finance committee. This
Yeah.
finance committee is not the finance committee I joined over a year ago.
Yeah.
I think it's a great thing. The insight you guys have brought and the way we've moved forward as a committee is just incredible. I mean, it really is. For as much as, all the things I had to say, I stand by what I said and the beliefs I had, and I still have them. But that in no means says you guys haven't made an incredible contribution to the finance committee.
Absolutely.
I can't say it strongly enough. It was so nice to have you guys come on and just really have the contributions you've had.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
definitely, it's definitely been a lot more discussion, and I definitely appreciate that. And Heather, you have your hand up.
I wanted to share, and I don't know if anyone saw this at Tuesday's Selectmen's meeting, but two things. We submitted our Green Communities Competitive Grant for the total amount of the grant funds and utility incentive funds is around $108,000. And I had applied for 2 community compact best practices, which were approved. And one particularly, I think you'll be interested, it's a financial trend monitoring system.
Ah,
So I think that will come in very handy, especially given the current economic situation. And the other was a continuity of operations plan, which when the whole outbreak occurred, when we grouped together with all the departments, one of the things that came up that we were lacking was a written continuity of operations plan. And so it identifies all the various functions, essential functions of the office, the personnel, and how we can continue to operate in something like this. So that will be very useful as well to have, because I don't think this is the end of it. So in all, that was a $50,000 grant for those 2 projects.
Great job.
Excellent.
That was all.
All right, if there's no other public comment from the board, is there any public comment from anybody in the public? There is not. Okay, then with that, in the discussion of next meetings, all right. Next Thursday would be the second Thursday of the month. So we would typically meet. Do you want to meet on next Thursday night? Or do you want a
I'm
break?
thinking I'm thinking that if the Board of Selectmen makes some decisions that need to be discussed by our committee, that would be a good time to do it. But I don't have a problem with skipping it also, because there's plenty of time between now and town meeting. Not a lot of time, but there's more than needing to meet.
But we don't even know, because, like, basically all we know is that we're pushed out until the 18th, and then we'll get, like, either pushed out further or things will open up.
So a question that probably needs asking then is, if next week we'd be in sequence, then our next meeting would be the 28th. Is
That would be
correct?
right.
Yep.
So that's 3 weeks from now. Is that too much time given all the various things? I mean, the things we deferred tonight, does it matter if we deal with them between now and the
Well,
28th?
it depends on how many meeting minutes you can get done between this week and next week.
Let's assume I'll get them all done.
We'll have, we can go ahead and schedule a meeting, and if it's a short meeting, it's a short meeting. But, or if there's anything that you folks have that you want to bring up or have on the table for discussion, and maybe it's, like, how do we want to shape the debt group? How do we want to, like, what are the things that we've been talking about that we want to make sure that we get work on, that maybe now's the time to go ahead and just pivot right to that.
That'd be a good idea, just to get those conversations going and not lose the momentum.
I'm inclined to say let's meet
Okay.
next week.
And then, how are you feeling about Sunday morning meeting? I should cancel?
I think you should cancel.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay, so people are pretty comfortable with the direction that the letter's going, so we're good.
Terry, could we leave a item on the agenda that just gives us an open-ended agenda item to continue to discuss the 2021 budget and any changes that happen on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis from now through until we get to town meeting? So we don't have to specifically contact you every week or whenever we're about to meet and say, hey, we need to talk about this, that, or the other thing about the budget, capital plan, or whatever.
If I think of it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Usually I'm gonna forget stuff. It's just bound to happen. But if I think it'll be okay, because usually I'll carry forward, especially with the Zoom meeting thing, since I have to punch that in. I'll usually just pull an old one, and so I've got that stuff on it. But I would need to make sure I include the new stuff as well. So
Right.
That's the stuff that I'm going to be more concerned about. So with that, then, our next meeting is going to be Thursday, May 14th. And I would assume we'll do that at 7 o'clock, unless anybody has a problem with the time. And I don't think that there was anything else on the agenda. So with that, I would accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Michelle,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Jay,
Aye.
and I for myself.